We are live.
I am recording.
You're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Colin.
And I'm Nathan.
And today we have a very special episode. We have the 1981 movie Reds.
Yes.
Came out December 25th, 1981. Were you in the theaters for this one, Nathan?
No, actually, believe it or not, when I was 6 years old, I was not in the theaters for 3.5 hour obscure historical piece about American communists in the 20s. I missed that boat. I just wasn't that. I could barely make it through like the right stuff at like 8. And now it's like that's one of my favorite movies. But it's like back then it was like, huh. So yeah, no, this one I don't think I got exposed to this until college.
Oh, okay.
So, and it was not a film class; it was a history class. Because our professor liked to play the scenes from the Soviet Union, or from about the like, oh, this is what the revolution like. This is a imagining of what the revolution was like there. Because that was my 20th century history class thing that I did.
Because this is my first time viewing of it, and I guess I was only vaguely aware of it. Although for some reason I thought it was some like Cold War era film about people trying to infiltrate America, and it was about like, you know, those cities built to like look like America or something. I don't know. Is that another film, or is that just like a often talked about like
often
rumor?
Repeated like cultural myth of the Cold War that America has.
Yeah.
Another one of these cultural myths we had about the Soviet Union, like they're so vastly superior to us in every way. We must spend all of our money on weapon systems to destroy the world 100 times over, because the Soviets are like, it's like they're the Klingons and Ming the Merciless all in one. They're way ahead of us in science. They're bigger, smarter, faster than us in every way. And then we find out once the Soviet Union falls apart, it's like, oh God, we bankrupted ourselves for this. But yeah, no, that's I've heard that story, but that's what like The Americans and other things are based on. Like we have these perfect infiltrate. Actually, The Americans is believable. But yeah, the thing, well, it's like Red Sparrow we talked about. It's like, yeah, that's like the super schools.
Well, and that movie Salt, which is very stupid, but that's essentially the concept of that too. Just a sleeper agent that's so embedded into American culture that they don't know the difference anymore. But they're still willing to betray the country once the trigger goes. So
there was a Charles Bronson movie. I think it was called Telephone, but it was spelled with an F. And it was like these people were like Manchurian candidates. It's a 70s movie. But these people were like Manchurian candidate Soviet sleeper agents in America. And it's like the program was deactivated, but somebody got the call codes and was calling these people on the phone. And they would attack like empty buildings and stuff that were like American military secret stuff like years ago, before the program was deactivated. And everyone's like, what the hell are these people doing? Like, why they attack this? And they also had secret caches of like AK-47s and RPGs that they'd seeded the land with. And so there's always been that kind of paranoia about, because if, you know, it sort of makes sense. Like if you're the Russians and you're at a complete disadvantage, you would do because those are like low-tech solutions to high-tech problems. It's like send in deep cover agents. I mean, we just busted a group, 10 years ago, that were actually doing that on Putin's behalf, because they were trying to figure out how the American economy worked. And it's like, we don't even know how that works.
But they were so inept, they basically turned themselves in by accident.
Yeah, they had like their cover names were like we're the Smiths and the Murphys, but they had thick Russian accents. Like, oh yeah, the Russian Murphys, right? Those. Okay. Totally believe you. Like, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Belfast. It's like that's not a real convincing Irish accent. But yeah. So yeah, it's like I said, the Russians and even the Soviet times, it was always more buffoonish than deadly. But we had to make it keep it scary, because the defense industry is a big part of our economy. It still is. So.
I remember in Call of Duty Cold War, they had like a mission where you go on, inside, Soviet Union, and like they have like an airplane hangar that's built up as American City. It's just an excuse to have like their idea what America is, which is basically like the Hollywood version of America. So you can have a shootout scene in like an American mall while Depeche Mode is playing.
Yeah.
But it's empty. So
it's a cool idea. I mean, the
Yeah,
people
yeah.
who make Call of Duty definitely have a love of like the genre. Like, how crazy can we make this? They definitely like took the Cold War stuff to like the next level of. So I had people like a mission where you were the camera guy in an SR-71, and of course you then had all the deep, again, the agents, like you didn't even know you were a Soviet agent, you were so deeply embedded, and all that other nonsense, which is like cool, but it doesn't work.
Anyways, that's not what this movie is.
No, it's nothing to do with the movie we're talking about. This is
For some reason,
based on real people you've never heard of.
yeah. I mean, I've clicked on this once on Internet Movie Database, and somehow when I read the synopsis, I thought that's what it was talking about, or I read something else. I'm not sure. Directed by Warren Beatty, who also starred in it. Cinematographer is Vittorio Storaro. I think that's how you say his name. He's worked a lot with Warren Beatty. Like, he also did Dick Tracy with him.
Sounds Italian.
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, very good cinematographer. I believe he won the Oscar for this movie.
Oh yeah, this movie managed to look like they made the Soviet Union in this movie look like 1984, the movie from like 4 years after this. It's like, oh, that's cool. I don't know if he was the same cinematographer in that, but yeah.
Maybe. I guess this is the first time they did like I'm not sure if this is the bleach bypass processing, but it's something like it kind of makes. I don't know how to describe it. It reclaims the silver back into the film, so everything kind of has like almost like a cartoonish edge to it. Not really, but like I don't just things have a higher contrast to it.
It has a look, because I know they did that in 1984.
Okay.
So when we talked about the movie, it's like, oh yeah, they basically almost destroyed the film.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, did we lose the movie?
But like, even though like this movie came out in 1981, like it still looks pretty good. Even though movies from the 80s, basically still look good. But this one, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's like they didn't do that for Apocalypse Now. There's something they did when they remastered Apocalypse Now, where like it looked like a movie from the modern era. And I was like, I don't know what film they shot it on, but like it looks like Apocalypse Now does not seem like a movie from the 70s. I know it's 79, but still.
Right. Well, they started filming it in what, 68?
This is written by Warren Beatty and Trevor Griffiths, like as a team. I'm not really sure who Trevor Griffiths is. He doesn't have a lot of credits. I don't even know if he was like a buddy of Warren Beatty or something. Yeah, just kind of wrote a lot of TV stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe as a commie. I'm not sure.
It could be. Well, you got to remember Warren Beatty. I think he only do like 30 films. It's like he doesn't, for this guy as well known as he was. He's like, he hasn't really done like, he'd do like 2 movies a year for 20 years.
Well, yeah, because he has like, he's like basically so good looking. He'd like do a movie like every decade, and people are like, oh yeah, Warren Beatty's back, and he looks exactly like he did.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true.
Like he like now he looks extremely old, but like remember, like, I don't know, do you remember Bulworth?
Yes.
Like he was in his 60s when he did that movie. He does
like
not
30s. Yeah. He looks about my age,
And in this movie, I think he's like 44.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just had amazing longevity, at least looks wise. And yeah. I don't even know if he got like a bunch of work done or anything, or he just like had those crazy genetics or whatever. But yeah, he did this in 81, and I think his next movie is like Dick Tracy in like 1990. So yeah. And then like he did Bulworth 9 years later. That was like 98 or something, or 99 or something like that. And he has some weird ones recently. Like he directed some movie about like a love story of people who like work for who's the crazy guy with the play?
Howard Hughes.
Yeah, he plays Howard Hughes in the movie.
Okay, yeah, I remember hearing about this.
I saw the trailer and it just looked embarrassing. I didn't actually watch it. And also weirdly, because he owns the rights to Dick Tracy, he'll do like these weird like rights retaining things where he'll just do a Dick Tracy presentation to just retain the rights to Dick Tracy so nobody else gets it.
Well, he says he wants to make a sequel. Yeah, it's the sequel you've been waiting 30 years for. It's I know with Warren Beatty, there was a film he had like his own personal Heaven's Gate too. I mean, he didn't direct or write it. I think it was the one after this. Let me look up his filmography real quick, because it's the one set in the Middle East.
Oh yeah, like, Ishtar or
what? In the 80s or something.
Oh yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, Ishtar. Okay. Now he did not. Warren Beatty just produced it and acted in it. He didn't write it. Oh yeah, $51 million in 87 bucks, and it made 14 million back. That's Heaven's Gate. Self-destruction there. And then after that, Dick Tracy. Yeah.
Which I don't know. It seems like Dick Tracy's kind of a joke now, but I remember like it looks great. There's a lot of cool imagery to it that was like really revolutionary for its time. And I feel like some people are coming back around to it as being like a cool movie. Like, I don't know if it's a good movie, but there's a lot of cool stuff to it.
Dick Tracy is a lot like it's like, because that came right after Tim Burton's Batman. Like that was the next superhero movie. And it's like, oh, it's done not quite in that style, but in that style. Because it's shot like a comic. Because you got the guys with like the big forehead and the guy that mumbles, and everyone looks like a comic book character. And Dick Tracy's talking into his watch, which is like, that's wildly futuristic. Now everyone does that. So it was seen as like, oh, it's not the weird Tim Burton dark reinterpretation of Batman, but it's still like a dark comic book movie with kind of a, like, the characters are all going to act a certain way. There's lots of killing and violence in it. And it's like, yeah, this is,
Although I did hear somebody talk about Dick Tracy, and like I didn't know the history of it, but apparently it's like it was just a comic strip, but it goes back like a long time, like I don't know, like the 50s or 40s or something like that. And they had the talking watch in it, but like mostly it was like 1920s detective stuff, but like I guess it would just swing around to like whatever people were into at the time. So like when the space race started happening, they just put Dick Tracy into space and it was like on Mars and stuff like that.
Let's do that. That should be him and Elon Musk on Mars. Because Warren Beatty will be like 90. It'll work out.
So the cast, we got Warren Beatty, of course. He's just pulling the trifecta of narcissism.
Yeah. Well, he got to make this movie because this previous movie made so much money.
Yeah.
Which he also directed. I think it was the first one he directed. Because he directed a movie like in the 70s that made like $120 million called Heaven Can Wait, which is like insane amount of money for that time.
Diane Keaton and Edward Herman. I'm not even sure who that is because
he's a famous. You'd know him if you watched a lot of History Channel in the 90s and a lot of PBS. You recognize the voice.
Oh yeah, the voice. Huh? Yeah. I don't know why he gets third billing here because definitely Jack Nicholson to me would be third billing, but that's all right.
I don't know. It depends. Don't know how it works.
Again, that's the imperfect nature of Internet Movie Database and how they put their who gets what billing. So
yeah,
and that could be a database problem, which would be a real problem for a company that puts database in their title.
Well, Wikipedia and Box Office Mogul also give Edward Herman third billing in this, so maybe they're all using the same equipment.
Let's see here. We'll start with Act 1. I split this up into 5 acts because this movie is fucking 3 hours and 40 minutes long. It took me a while to watch this thing.
I think this came on 4 VHS cassettes.
Huh.
I think 3 was the movie, and then the 4th one was like all the interstitial interviews. Like you can just watch all at once on the 4th I believe so. Because like I said, I wasn't exposed to this till I was in my 20s in college, and it was a community college, but it was like, oh, I'm sorry, time to take my medicine. It was because I remember it was on VHS, and I was like, I'd never seen one with 4, but I don't know if that was a school version or that was just the version you got. I don't know.
I'm sorry, the version I watched is 3 hours and 15 minutes. There was a 3 hours and 40 vision version that was on Tubi that I was going to watch. But the day I pulled it up, it was gone from Tubi. So.
Tubi, no. Oh, Tubi. I just have it on disc, so. It's on 2 DVD discs. You got to put in part 1 and part 2 because it's DVD encoding, not Blu-ray.
Oh, really? Huh, okay.
Yeah.
It's always the weird thing here where we pick a movie and then like the weird shuffle that happens between the services or not existing on a service and all that stuff. So,
and then I have this massive volume of DVDs. My true depression days before the internet, when I was just like, I'm going to watch movies for 10 hours a day. That's why I was also when I was working 6 or 7 days a week. So my days off, I'm just watching movies and eating tacos, and everyone else can go to hell. Because I'm working literally every day of the week, and I could never go back to that now. Anyway, Act 1.
Act 1. We have an old-timey piano, which my Google Notes doesn't want timey to be a word, so... We get titles, Reds. Then we got a credit roll.
And what I call Soviet script.
We got a voice of some guy being interviewed. This is... And this is Louise Bryant. Yeah. It's the Diane Keaton character.
Yeah.
And then we cut to like real people being interviewed, and they're all elderly and talking about the 1900s.
Yep.
And they're talking about Louise Bryant and Jack Reed, who's also called John Reed, which always threw me off. But in my notes, he's Jack Reed because people do interchangeably in this movie call him Jack or John. I don't know, based on situations. I know that's interchangeable back then, but it's weird. Like we never called our dad Jack before.
Yeah. Start now though. Like show up. Hey Jack, how's it? I've never called my dad by his first name either. That's kind of John, how are you? It's like, huh?
But they do that stuff with Kennedy too, where it's like people be John Kennedy and Jack Kennedy, and it's like I just never got it. But also there's a F1 driver. His name is Sergio Perez, but people call him Checo because for some reason Checo is like Sergio to Checo is the same way as John to Jack somehow in Spanish. I don't know how it works, but it's weird.
Yeah. Well, I know I published his book under the John Reed name. So
okay. So yeah, maybe like Jack is more of an like when you know him personally, and then John's more informal or whatever.
Yeah.
Then we cut to Jack Reed.
It's like Nixon. My friends call me Mr. President. They're like, "Hey, Dick." He's like, "My friends call me Mr. President."
All right, Dick.
That was that great scene where the guy played Richard Helms. People called him Dick informally too, and he was kind of a prick about it. So it was kind of, I forget who was in that scene. It was Hopkins and somebody else, but yeah.
Was that Ed Harris or something?
No, it's the guy. He was on Law and Order. He's a very famous actor. He looks like a old-timey president. And he has a cool voice and a way of talking, and I can't think of his name. Anyway, it's a deleted scene from Nixon. You got to go deep Nixon.
Is this where he had like the black eyes and stuff?
Yes,
and he's talking about stuff.
Yes.
Let's see.
My favorite. I was like, I hope that really happened actually, because that's really cool.
I think it's Sam. Is it
Sam Waterston?
Okay.
I think it's Waterston.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah. I just put in Law and Order prosecutors, and a list came up, and I'm like, I think it's that guy.
Yeah, that's him. Because him and Nixon were not happy, and like, "Hi, Dick, I'm glad to see you." It's my friend's president. It's like, oh, then so shall I. He was doing his dialogue really weird, but that's what Oliver Stone told us. It's like, just act crazy.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite cut scenes from a movie ever.
Yeah,
because usually scenes from a movie are cut for reasons. this one was probably just time and weirdness. Like we can't get this weird, but it's a great scene.
Oh yeah, you can, because that is like when I think Oliver Stone, I don't agree with all his stuff, but he is my guide to the 60s. Like when I think of anything that went on in the 60s, it's like, yeah, whatever Oliver Stone says is the theme music in the back of my head. Now, I might not agree with everything he says, but he basically is like, yeah, that's how our countries ran. It's like, I sort of agree with him. But my thing is, it's like, I'm not horrified by it. It's like, well, yeah, that's just like part of the horror that runs the world. Like, we're not going to change it or make it better, but we can understand the evil so it doesn't eat us. But, you know, we'll never tame the evil. Anyway, Reds.
No, I'm going to make one more aside. My other favorite cutscene is from Terminator 2, where they switch his computer chip to be like learning, so self-learning.
Okay.
And so they have, because Linda Hamilton has a twin, so they had like a double on the outside and Arnie in a mirror, and then they had her twin on the other side, so they could do this mirror shot, so they could have, well, it wasn't a double, it was just a dummy, so they could get inside his head and then show Arnie on the other side as being in the mirror when he's just literally on the other side of a plate, on a plate that's not a mirror, and then her twin sister was on the other side mirroring her.
I got to see that one. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's just a super practical effect, and then just the happenstance that's like, oh, your lead actor or one of your lead actors has a twin that we can use to do this effect. All practical. Anyways, just kind of long, and they cut it from the movie, but essentially
left that in. That sounds like something necessary. Like, why does he act different from the one in the first movie?
Yeah, because when he first gets there, he's just like, he just does things that he's told. And then, but they have to turn on this learning thing, and that's when like he starts, like learning about humans and stuff. And but literally, like I guess through context stuff, you could just pick it up where it's like, well, John tells him all these things, and he starts doing that. So it's just John. It's not a computer switch. But
I like the computer switch idea. I'd also like to write like a humorous descriptor. Remember those weird? You did this years ago. It's like the strange descriptors for movies. And my thing for Terminator is like an autistic time traveler comes back in time to try to understand America. Think about how the Terminators act, and you think about how some autistic people act. It's like, this is the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I am here to learn. It's like, okay, well, you're a robot. No, I am neurodivergent. Like, yeah.
Well, I can tell you from computer programming, computers are very literal. They do not like anything abstract.
Yeah, I want to be the lunatic that like I'm introducing ambiguous computing. They used to call that fuzzy logic.
Yeah,
that was for allowing errors and like error proofing, like trying to account for. I don't know. I learned about it sometime. It probably doesn't even exist anymore. I'm old.
We got to like, it's kind of like a sepia tone picture where Warren Beatty he's playing Jack Reed. He's running from like an explosion. He's chasing a carriage, and I didn't know if this is like him in like Mexico or something, or if this is just the scene from later on in the movie. I can't remember.
No, it's him in Mexico.
Oh, okay,
because he's a reporter for who was he a reporter for? Was it the masses?
Well, that's like his thing, isn't it?
Oh, I thought he was a report. Maybe it was,
because like whatever Gene Hackman's character is, that's the place he works for where he actually gets money from. But like his own like kind of independent thing is the masses. I thought, I'm not sure.
Well, the masses was Piet Vlag, a Dutch socialist from the Netherlands, founded the magazine in 1911.
Oh, okay.
And then Rufus Weeks, the vice president of the New York Life Insurance Company, funded it because he was sympathetic towards the cause. That's weird for an insurance guy to be like, yeah, I want these socialists to have this magazine. So yeah, he worked for these guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then we cut to now we're in the movie with Louise Bryant, played by Diane Keaton, who's talking with people on Art Gallery. Apparently they're in Portland. There's a guy mad because there's a depiction of a naked lady, but it's like a drawn depiction. But, this is like the 1900s. So it's like, pox on thy house.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe this. My genitals, they're aroused. Or I can't be seen appreciating this in public. Yeah, because believe me, in that uptight era, the stuff that went on behind closed doors was horrifying. But yeah, as long as I didn't say it in public, it was fine.
Well, at
And
first
also,
I
it was a picture of her naked.
oh, okay.
It was not a painting; it was a picture. But everything she shot kind of out of focus. Because
Oh,
remember,
okay.
that's the always the rejoinder to her physical art was like it's kind of fuzzy, and really angry because it's like, oh, these idiots, they don't see the brilliance.
I was also kind of confused because at first, like, oh, is she like a painter or is she a photographer? And then apparently she's a writer. Okay. But she's also a writer.
Photographer. And
Okay.
then it's like that competes with she's a photographer because, she feels like she's being stifled as a writer.
Yeah.
And that's, well, we'll go on. Yeah.
Then we cut to M. Emmett Walsh, who's, I think he's literally just listed as like liberal speaker or something.
Yep.
At the Liberal Club. And then Jack Reed takes the floor because they're all like rah jingoistic stuff here, and these are supposed to be like the liberal Democrats, and they
are.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, it's all right, Jack Reed, what do you think? And he says, I think World War I's about profits. And then he takes his leave and everyone's shocked by it. It's like,
yeah,
no, it's about doing the right thing. It's like, no, it's about guys that are profiting from war.
Yeah. It's like what's his name? The crazy general. The war is a racket guy said. Yeah. What was his name? I can't remember. Anyway, basically said that it's like they didn't know what a mic drop was back then, so we didn't like take the mic off and drop it. But yeah, that's basically what he did.
Yeah, the room was, yeah, this is like, yeah, this is the time where you had to be a real orator, where you'd have to project your voice to an entire audience because you didn't have, or have that weird like cheerleader microphone thing.
Yeah.
That was just a funnel for your voice to get louder.
That's why Hitler gave those weird speeches where he was like doing this and rolling his eyes and stuff. It's because you really couldn't see him.
Yeah.
So if he moved his head and arms around a lot, it was like, oh, is he a lunatic? He's like, no, this is before they filmed everything up close.
He's playing for the cheap seats.
Yeah. You learned to do that from a magician, by the way. It's really
that's after like Louise asked Jack for an interview, and then he just like, it's kind of weird because at first it just seems like he's just hanging out with her and then like, oh, is sex implied? But then he just spends the whole night. He literally talks to her till dawn.
Yeah.
Telling him about what he thinks about the world.
This movie is the conversations between Warren Beatty and Diane Keaton. Because let's just say, because means we've started the discussion about the movie. I like this movie. It is not what I would call conventionally entertaining, though.
Yeah.
You've really got to like camera work and dialogue to get into this movie. Because this movie was like hard to take your eyes off of because you just wanted to see like, oh, what this looks cool. This is well shot. But it was also fun to listen to.
Yeah.
Because these are the arguments you want to have with your wife or girlfriend, where you talk to them this way, and everyone there's back and forth, and you both make good points. It never happens. It just descends into screaming the F word at each other. But it doesn't, and it's cool. So, yeah.
And there's a point where it seems like she's like proposing sex, but then she hands him I wrote art portfolio, but it's like her writing portfolio. Which is actually a more intimate thing to them.
Yeah, actually it would be like, that's better than her like, well, let's just lay down on this bed and go at it. It's like, no, I want to show you my inner heart. And not my inner parts. And and he's also taken up because he thinks he's like he's gonna start taking his clothes off, and she just can't read my script, that nightmare where people are handing you stuff like, read this. It's like, oh no.
Yeah, if you've never had to ask somebody to read your writing, it's a terrible thing, because you're either asking a friend to lie to you, or you're asking a stranger to be very mean to you.
Now, in taking this, do you want me to tear you apart or build you up? Do you want me to try to do both at the same time? A balancing act.
Jack is visiting his mom in Portland. Yeah, it's Jack. Yeah. He's like raising money for a magazine called The Masses.
Yeah.
Everyone here is old and boring. And then Louise shows up, but she has like a different name. which I didn't know if this was like a ruse or if she's like divorced or something, but she's going
No,
by
it's a
Mrs. Trollinger.
Yeah.
Because also like this at this time, like women weren't allowed to vote, so you know.
Yeah, you can't forget what a weird time this was in like history. It was like the last interstitial period of we can be openly like just openly exclude people.
Yeah.
Just people of the opposite gender. I mean, it still goes on, but it's like in this world, it was like, no, you can't vote. Like crazy women can't be allowed to vote. Are you kidding? What if they're on their period and they don't vote? Never know what the stuff was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it's like they don't pay taxes, or there's all kinds of arguments.
But but it was like you're telling like literally over half the population.
Yeah,
you can't vote. So.
Yeah, they act like have these laws about women. You act like women are like 1/8 of the population, 50% plus of the people, and you've all had a mother. Every one of you have had a mother, but it's like, oh, I'm a complete misogynist who think women, like the Borat thing. It's like their brain is size of squirrel, whatever they believe. People still believe that stuff too. It's not all past, but.
Then there's like walk in the woods where Jack and Louise go out in the woods, and then she like sits down on a blanket. It's at night, and she goes, "I like to see you with your pants off, Mr. Reed." And then they have sex, but it's kind of more classy, I guess. They just kind of fade out, I think.
It's like I dream about like, let's have an argument about something and like really cool, and then we're gonna go have sex in the grass. It's like, it sounds fun, actually. That's why I completely believe them as characters. It's like, yeah, people do this stuff, or at least I've read stories about these kind of intellectual people from the, that part of that time in history.
Well, also like where you compose the scene against all the stuffy old people who like don't want to look at like partial nudity and stuff like that, for them to basically just have sex out in the open, like near the house where there's a party at. Like clearly these people are like freewheeling. Like,
oh yeah, well that's the thing. Like they're rebelling against the norms of they're crazy people. Like they're not. They're basically like proposing like open relationships and stuff. It's like that doesn't happen. He's married to someone, a dentist.
Then Jack invites Louise to New York. He says, if you want to write, go where the writers are. If you want freedom, go where the freedom is. So.
Yep. Which I thought, oh, they're going to Paris, but it's like, oh, no, New York. Okay, cool.
Then we cut back to the interviews, which is like they're interviewing real people from 1900s that knew Jack and Louise, which is almost like, well, no, it is embarrassing. Listening to the interviews and you're thinking like, oh, we've progressed, like we're very progressive people, and like these are people, this movie is 40 fucking years old, they're interviewing people from 60 years before that, so over 100 fucking years, and we're still having the same fucking argument.
Oh yeah, nothing's changed. Nothing has, well, it has. It's a little better in some ways.
Yeah.
As far as, like I said, the structures of being able to openly discriminate against people, that is kind of, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist where you can just openly, like, you can't buy houses here, or you can't vote, or that's
you're
gone.
You're not being excluded by the government, but you can privately be excluded at people's.
Well, here's the thing, specifically what these people are against, the physical nature of our world and your ability to make money and employment not being either degrading or slavery, which is what these people were against, that is bigger than ever. Probably bigger than it was then. But as far as like, oh, the social niceties and what you can say and do, like that's pretty well corralled at this point. Yeah. Because you're like, oh, look, we're being nice to people, but we're actually not doing anything, to address their physical misery and working in this world. It's like, no, that's not, and that's all these people were talking about. So
but they're also talking about like fighting for abortions and stuff like that, which stuff that had to be way crazier at this time for all that, and we're just steering back into that for some reason.
I don't understand. I don't understand why abortion being generally available wasn't more common back then, because they did not have effective birth control at that time. Like, we didn't have effective birth control in this country until the 60s. Like, this was like 50 years before that. So you think men would privately be like, yeah, this abortion thing might actually work out. Because just think, every time you had an affair on your wife, which a lot of people did back then, because you could literally move one town over and no one knew who you were. It's like, oh yeah, every time I sleep with this woman, she could get pregnant. It's like, you'd think that would be, men would be more interested in abortions back then, but but they didn't have to, it was always love them and leave them too. I guess they didn't have genetic stuff where they could prove that was your child. You could just be like, that wasn't my child. Who is this trollop? Send her away.
Well, I know, like, it's not necessarily, it's historical fiction, so it's not about the time, but, like, was Cider House Rules around the same time?
That was before this.
Oh, before? Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure. Let me check, but I think so. I think Cider House Rules was like turn of the century. I could be wrong.
I mean, that's kind of when this takes place. I mean, it's, like a decade after, or...
Yeah, this is like the end of... Well, this takes like...
This is like 1914 when it starts.
Yeah, it's like the end, the beginning after the end of World War II.
No, it's the start of World War One. It's a start. Yeah. It starts as World War One's about to ramp up, or is already going on, and before the American involvement in World War One. World War One's already going on, so.
Oh no, Cider House Rules is like in the 30s. Okay, it's after.
Okay.
Okay, I was wrong. It's one of the few times I've ever been wrong. Holy shit.
Well, so it's not like, Cider House Rules is based on real stuff, but it's not like it's historical fiction, not like a necessarily based on a true story or whatever. Well, I mean, not, whatever.
Well, this is based on a true story.
Yeah, these are real people, but
it's just we don't know how much of their lives are fictionalized, and I like the movie so much, and I like the interaction between the two main characters. I didn't look because I want to pretend that, like, oh yeah, these people actually live this way and love this way, and that was fine. Now I don't want to know if it wasn't true, or if this guy had like 15 mistresses. It's like, I don't want to know that. I want to think of him as I think of him in the movie. Because if it wasn't for I would have had no idea who this guy even was. I only vaguely know him because he wrote that book. So,
so we have Act 2. Louise makes it to New York at Jack's apartment, which what is it? What is this? Greenwich Village, or what is that? What it is in New York?
No, it's Croton on the Hudson.
Oh, okay.
It's in Westchester. So it's kind of it's like this. We lived in Westchester. It's like a suburb of New York.
Well, at some point in the interview, they're talking about Greenwich Village and just talking about, like, that's where all, like, the,
yeah, that's where, like, all the bohemian stuff's going on.
Okay.
But I think the apartment they live in is more like,
okay.
Wait, no. They are in Greenwich Village at first, and then when they decide to get married, then they move out on the Hudson Valley. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's where I was confused. It's like, oh yeah, that's near a place we used to live. But
so she gets to his apartment.
Colin was born. Born and raised a New Yorker. Or actually, Orange County. You're like an Orange County chopper guy.
Yeah.
Why don't you just start talking like that, even though you're from Iowa? Just like for no reason, have a East Coast. Just stop using R.
I don't know. The Orange County guys don't necessarily sound like they're like super New Yorkers either. So I don't know.
They do when you compare them to like Midwestern rednecks like we know. They say, the dad especially, he gets really mad. You fucking guys, we're fucking me smoking cigarettes, laughing. We're supposed to be building bikes while sitting in office. Surf porn. People are lazy. That's why this country's going to hell, because I haven't paid taxes in 15 years. Fucking commies.
I haven't checked up to them in like 5 years. I wonder what the fuck happened to them.
They're still suing each other. It's a great family.
Well, I remember they brought it back, and they just basically had like a split crew that like follows Orange County and then Polly's new thing, and like I don't even know if either are still around, because that was like the thing, like they got big around a time where you had like it was like the next generation was having their their midlife crisis and they couldn't afford Corvettes, but they could afford an Orange County chopper.
Yeah. It's basically like my guys my age buying $40,000 fucking death bikes, and
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, this is. Actually, I don't know if it was guys my age. I think it was people like 10 years older than me.
But when it got to my generation, my generation had a midlife crisis. Well, we can't afford even that, so I have to imagine that market has dried up pretty quickly.
Yeah, what's like the what are you, like a millennial?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the millennial midlife crisis going to be like? Like American Bicycle, like it's what
no, like a lot of it's like rebuying like the toys from our childhood.
Oh, is that like the screwed up videos I've seen where the guy like goes home and eats a grilled cheese sandwich and watches like Rugrats on DVD because it was like the best time of his life?
Yeah.
And it's like but he looks older than me, but he's actually like in his late 30s, and
yeah,
you just tell he's a complete alcoholic. But I've seen videos like that. It's like, is this a weird joke, or is this real, or is this, what is this?
Well, I've seen like even like because I did like got into some like YouTube toy stuff, and it's like, oh, it's cool, but I'll never do that. It's like because I already had a section where I bought all these fucking Star Wars toys that like I just got like I had an idea for it, and then like I collected a bunch of them, and like I guess that wasn't worth it because I didn't do anything with them. And now they're just all sitting in boxes doing nothing. But when people come by, it's like, look at this cool stormtrooper.
Hey, I like those things. I think those are cool.
But yeah, like they will do stuff like, but like, I think it's Mattel. But like, when I was a kid, what was big was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures, and they've gone so far that people have like gone to buy. Also, the thing is that coincided with a lot of this stuff is like Toys R Us went out of business. So now you have all these like small boutique privately owned toy stores that are just selling old toys back to the people like they just remembered it when they had it when they're kids, and they're just trying to reacquire their childhood. And now Mattel has gone so far as to basically just like get the molds back out and reissue these old toys and sell them as new toys, new old toys. And so a lot of that, and you got a lot of stuff with emulation stuff. Like there's a thing called like the Analog Pocket where you can play like Game Gear games, Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance games, and it emulates it perfectly. And so that stuff's like $300, which is expensive for a game to do emulation, but is less expensive than a $40,000 motorcycle. So
yeah.
Anyways, that's my generation's midlife crisis purchase.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what mine was. I don't know. I never really had a midlife crisis. I've been fairly happy with my life most of the time. It's like in the last 6 years, it's really starting to.
Well,
but it's not an individual misery for me. It's like collective misery in the nation. It's like I don't think it's an individual thing. It's like actually, I feel like my life sucks less than most people's. So I don't really have a lot to complain about, but I can see that it's getting bad.
I mean, I don't know. Like that's just kind of a thing in movies and thing people say it's midlife crisis, but like in movies. The inciting incident is always we need to get money for college, or we need to pay for health care, or someone's having a midlife crisis. That's pretty much the things that's the plot that powers all movies. Wow.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I never could worry about anything too long.
But anyways, I mean, just the idea of a midlife crisis is basically you get to a point where like, oh crap, like I'm getting older. This is my last moment to be young. So you buy fast cars and stuff like that, and you have the money to do it. Stuff like that. So
yeah. I guess if I start wearing tank tops and driving like 1970s Corvettes with giant big block engines in them, we'll know.
So Luis gets the Jack's apartment. He's not there, but the apartment is just like strewn with his own history, which is kind of like, oh, is he just a big narcissist, or he just wants strangers to see all his accomplishments? I don't know.
Or is he just so busy with all this stuff?
Yeah. He's basically like, he's not, he's sort of he's a reporter, so he's kind of an investigator, but he's almost got like, the stuff he has up is almost got like the, like the red twine going from like one place to another almost.
The string diagrams of like, lunatics. It's like it all comes together. Just connect the dots.
And then Louise goes to sleep, and then she wakes up as like Jack comes home and he's got company. This is where like Edward Herman shows up because they almost never point the camera at him, but he's like, I know that voice.
Yeah.
Which he's like played the father in like almost every movie. Like he was. I think he's called Matt. I think his character's name is Max in this, and also like one of the other big things he was in the Lost Boys. He was the father. He's also called Max in the Lost Boys. So yeah, they're having a conversation about women's rights and stuff like that, and then Jack is happily surprised when he finds Louise there, though she's just kind of like annoyed, like, where were you? But you have to remember, at this time, like people barely had phones, let alone like cell phones and stuff like that.
Yeah, you had to be standing near a phone in a bar when it rang. Or people had to call out as like, hey, Jack, are you here? No. Yeah. And especially like he was in other countries where like they didn't even have running water, let alone phone infrastructure. So yeah, he could be gone for months, and you just have to wait.
Yeah, sometimes I try to remember, like, man, what did we do before cell phones? Because there's so much like stuff at work where it's like, man, if I didn't have a cell phone, like none of this shit would get done. There'd be so much time wasted and nobody being informed on anything. But then I remember when I was a kid, like if you wanted to like call home, you would just like go up to a stranger's house and be like, "Can I use your phone, sir?"
Yeah.
And they would let you.
Come on in. Would you like a glass of water from the tap? It's safe.
So luckily kids have cell phones now, because now you'll be murdered on site if you do that.
Oh yeah, I like this trend now where you go knock on someone's door and they like fire a fucking cannon off from the other side. It's like, what the hell is... I've had people knock on my door all the time. Sometimes they were even drunk. I never shot at them once. I was usually like close the door like, yeah, I can't help you. She doesn't live here or whatever. And then they pound on the door. It's like, okay, I'm calling the police now. But it never occurred to me just to like fire through the door. or just have like just throw a grenade at my front door or whatever people are doing now. I don't know. It's all lunatics.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'd like a psychological breakdown of these people, because is it like, are they literally like are so full of anxiety that like the fear just takes over and it's like, I must defend myself, and this is their fight or flight? Or is it like more evil and it's like, finally my fantasy has come true and I can defend my house against the victim?
This is the moment. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I go walking all the time now, a day or night. I've never once even thought about like, I'm afraid. It's never occurred to me. And sometimes I'm like, should I be afraid? It's like, well, no, nothing's ever happened here. It doesn't mean it won't, or it never has, but it's like, no. And all I'm doing is walking. Like if I was going out like, well, I'm going to break in somebody's house. Like, well, yeah, there's a chance something's going to happen then. But yeah, I don't know. I don't get this trend in this country where people are firing through door. Usually if you're behind a door, that's like, you're safe.
Yeah.
I don't know why you need to shoot through the door. And there's no law that will uphold your right of self-defense if you fire through a door. Like that's not defending yourself. That's but yeah,
it's also one of the things, like once it happens once in the news media, then people start looking at it and you just realize, oh, this happens all the time. We just haven't been focusing on it. It's like, well, that seems worse.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the truth is because I don't really watch the news much anymore. So I have no idea. Like in my world, it's like you can knock on my door day or night. Whenever, if you knock on my door after 11 o'clock, I'm not answering it, but I'm not going to shoot through it either. But you can come to my door whenever you want to, whatever you need. Like glass of water, use my phone. Well, I'm not going to shoot you because I'm not afraid of you either. So maybe now if I was a woman and I weighed 90 pounds, it's like, yeah, I might feel differently, but it's like, okay, cool.
And you're sleepy and you walk into a long apartment.
Yeah.
This is my house. Bang, bang, bang. Oh, this is not my house.
Well, then people got in their car by mistake because they thought it was a ride share.
Yeah.
It was a teenager, like a white teenage cheerleader. did a ride share and jumped into this guy's car, and she was like, "Oh, you're not my Uber. I'm sorry." And she got out. Then he gets out of the car and then fires into the car that she's sitting in with her friends. Like, she didn't like get in the car and stab him in the neck with a scalpel, and he had to, nothing like that happened. But he's just gonna like then fire into the car. Trust me, if some hot cheerleader jumps into my car by mistake, it's like, well, where do you want to go? It's like, why are we shooting at these people? What are we doing? People are nuts. So yeah.
We cut to more interviews about like the rebels of the time, which I don't know. I mean, it's more stories about Louise and Jack and just stuff in general.
Yeah.
And about like Greenwich Village here, and the communists and the socialists. Which here there's the distinction I don't necessarily know.
About what?
The difference between, in this movie, a socialist and a communist.
Oh, yeah. Well, there are different things. Yeah. Because socialism is built. Okay, the way I understand it, the way actual communists and socialists that I've talked to have explained it to me, socialism is money sharing built on the back of capitalism. So socialism requires a capitalist engine, but it's just heavily taxed. It's kind of like what goes on in Scandinavia. Like, those are all capitalist countries, but they have a strong socialist system that taxes them. Communism is like, when they talk about controlling the means of production and things, that is a totally controlled system. Like, we determine how many tractors are made, how many loaves of bread are made, and we manage it's called a command economy. There is no capitalist engine under communism. It's just a total control of all the means of production by communists who will direct things,
but
theoretically for the good of people, but
but like in communism, presumably there's no private ownership. The state owns everything, and then you are supposed to be given an equal share, but it never works out that way in practice.
For some reason it never. But socialism is actually way more practical, because the systems of making money that we do have and understand and are proven to work, this just taxes them more.
Yeah.
But there's still like a free market. You still own, like in England and Sweden, it's like you still own your house, you still own your car. It's not like given to you by the state. But it's like, no, but we provide like healthcare and all the stuff that like we have to fight for here, it's provided there.
But it's also like weird, because in China, it's like, it's not even like what you'd call communism. I don't even know what the hell it is. Like, the state runs a bunch of stuff, but there is still private ownership and private companies in China.
Yeah, well, China's basically what you call a police state. I mean, they're dressed in the robes of, because it's still like People's Liberation this and People's Army that and all that. But they're a socialist state, essentially. Like, they have a capitalist engine that runs everything. They were like overtly communist, but it didn't work out. They killed a lot of people and it didn't work out. But that's but yeah, the thing is, like, with socialism is practical, because it's like, oh no, we don't have to imagine a new economic system. We just have to imagine a new kind of government and a system of taxation that works for everyone.
And the money is generated for services where it's like a lost thing. It's like, we need roads. You can't make money just building roads. So everybody needs to chip in here.
Yeah. So that's the difference, essentially.
Yeah.
That's why, like, like when they call Democrats communists, like on Fox News or something, I laugh. It's like, no, they're about as far from communists as you are, sir. Now, you might generously say they're socialists. They're not even that. But it's like, yeah, but that's because I view these terms differently. So it's like, yeah, when I hear them call like, oh, Biden's being a commie, I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, he's somehow a communist, a fascist, and a socialist.
Yeah, he's all these things at once. I love the commie fascist. It's like, huh? He's like Obama is Hitler. That was my favorite. Like, it's like, oh, Obama's an ultra nationalist now. He's like, America first, America always. Folks, we're going to take America and we're going to conquer the world, because America's not safe unless America controls the world. Like, if he started saying stuff like that, it's like, Obama does sound like Hitler now, but he never said things like that, because but it's just an emotional thing. Nobody's like, trying to mix these terms up because they secretly like believe that. It's just a way to get like dumbasses to. It's all the people with room temperature IQs that think communists, socialists, and Democrats are the same thing.
They just know that's a bad word, and that's what you say just about somebody you don't like, and so.
Well, then tell people it's like, no, we actually live in a socialist country. And they're like, no, we don't. It's like, oh, yeah, we do. You ever heard of Social Security? It's called Social Security. You know why it's called Social Security? Because it keeps poor people or old people from falling into poverty. It provides a socially secure station for them. You understand we have like individual tax rates as high as almost any country you can think of as far as income taxes. Now, where we don't have is like VAT taxes and sales taxes and shit. But yeah, our personal income taxes are not like that much lower than other modern countries. But yeah, people lose their minds when you say that. It's not the same thing. It's like, yeah, it kind of is. It's just like we have all these knock-on benefits of like, well, we pay a lot of taxes for this, that, and the other, but we also get like a lot of like iPhones and shit come out of that technology too. Like there's a lot of things America does. It's like really unique, but as we can see by the way our country is right now, it's like this is really working out well for just keep doing it, pretend there's nothing wrong.
It's working out for the majority, absolutely.
Yeah. It's the two boats and a plane crowd is doing well. If you got a boat on the East Coast and a boat on the West Coast and a plane to fly back and forth between them, America is your country. And everyone else is just lazy.
Jack is at a soiree. That's what I'm calling it. They're talking about unionizing. Here's where Jack Nicholson shows up. He plays Eugene O'Neill,
which is probably the only person in this movie that anyone would actually know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know. Gene Hackman shows up later on. But
no. I mean,
as a real historical figure?
Real
okay.
Person. Yeah.
What's his thing? Because I don't.
He's a very famous playwright.
Okay.
Trying to think of what his biggest. What's his biggest play? I mean, there's so many.
It's also funny because did he one like was that Jack's poem or Eugene's about like you can't climb my apple tree or whatever that thing?
That was a song.
Okay.
I don't remember who sung it, but yeah.
Well, who wrote it? Was one of these guys write it, or was that just around at the time?
I think that was around at the time.
Okay. Yeah, because there's funny times in the interview where they start talking about like some of these songs that are like, to me, it was kind of weird and not good. And like, man, that was a banger.
We love that song. We got to remember, this is the pre-Elvis universe too.
Yeah.
Because remember that they make those movies about World War II, and we've kind of like modernized World War II in our modern mindset because there's so many World War II movies. You're thinking like, oh yeah, Operation Overlord, they need to be playing Metallica for that. Like, all they had was that big band stuff. It's like they didn't have rock and roll in World War II. It'd be cool if they did. And now when they do put rock and roll soundtracks to World War II, a lot of people are like, yeah, that's cool. Like they don't even realize it's like, no, that's totally anachronistic. That movie didn't, or that music didn't exist. Yeah.
Or I think there was like a rendition of Yankee Doodle Dandy that was like, oh, that was a hit.
She was really shuffling her feet in her long skirt. It was exciting. You could see her thingies bouncing around. You know, people were so innocent back then, but they weren't. There was just everything was like you just had to peel back this crust, and it was just all just animals humping. It seemed like it was innocent.
We cut to Jack and the IWW, which is like, I don't even remember what that stands for.
The International World Workers Union.
Okay.
Industrial Workers Workers of the World.
Okay.
The model, the place I buy my models, that was their headquarters around here.
Huh.
The IWW, they call them the Wobblies. Remember when we read the book Red Heat? The detective novel?
I did not read that.
Yeah, we read that and talked about it on the show.
Oh, I must just forgot everything about it.
It wasn't called Red Heat. It was called something. But yeah, that was the Wobblies versus the mine owners in Montana.
Oh, is that like that 1920s detective one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the Wobblies were one of the protagonists in that.
Oh, okay, yeah. There was like the Pinkertons in there too and stuff like that. Okay.
Yep.
That's who they're fighting against.
Yep. Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's it's a crazy because they have a history with the UAW too. I think the UAW like left the American Federation of Labor at some point because it's like, oh, the Wobblies are crazy. We can't, because the UAW, the union I'm in, is very straight down the middle. It's a really straight laced union because they're tied to automotive and aerospace and farm implements and stuff. Like they never got too far into communism, but they didn't. But at certain points in America, like you couldn't be seen as anything even close to that. So they all had to break up and reform. And yeah, yeah. But the international industrial workers of the world's a crazy. They pass out a leaflet at work that you can read. There's also actual communists that pass out something you can read at the gate too, called the Spark. Like they're trying to start communism again in 2023. It's like, this is cool. I always keep them and read them. Some lady will hand them out. It's like, take this, brother. You know, this is about our future. It's like, cool, thanks. Wow, this really goes on. I feel like I'm like in one of those you're living in the past, you know, where everyone dresses in ye old clothes and puts like they do a village somewhere. It's like, oh, sometimes I feel like that's where I'm working. Like, oh, there's actual communists handing me leaflets. Yeah, this is cool.
This is quaint. I'm living in a time.
Yeah, nobody does this anymore. This never happens.
They're talking with farm workers about their working conditions. Like they work a 7-day week. They make 10 to 20 cents an hour, which I don't know what correlates to that time, but sounds bad.
Wage for that kind of for the amount of physical labor you're doing, that's terrible.
And basically have no time off whatsoever. And
your mom died, I can give you 2 hours. 2 hours to get her in the ground. Be here in your fucking suit if you have to. We need to get these beets out of the ground.
And then the meeting gets broke up by like some cops and union breakers. So this is like some Pinkerton stuff going on here. And the cops, so it's officiated by the government essentially.
Oh yeah.
Break these guys. They're like, well, we have a right to legally assemble, and it's like, not if you're workers. And then a guy just like hits Jack with the butt of a shotgun or something. I can't remember, but yeah,
he's basically like, yeah, you can't. We have a right to be here. We have a permit. We rented this building, and the cop just kind of looks around. Boom! It's like, not now. Which happened all the time.
Yeah. Probably still happens.
Still happens, probably. Yeah. Yes. Who's the guy? What was the modern like Chavez when he was organizing the like the guys picking tomatoes and stuff in the 60s and 70s? Like, yeah, it was old school union busting then because they were a bunch of migrants, so they had even less say in what was going on. Yeah, that guy was crazy taking on because the farmers lobby would just hire like the worst people. It's like, hey, who's about ready to come out of Pelican Bay? Yeah, we could use you down here to break up these these migrant workers. But anyway, go ahead.
I figured there's some company that did like some. I can't remember what it was. It was like some modern like tech company that basically like some of their like sub managers took it upon themselves to hire people to basically harass people for like giving them negative reviews. No, it was for eBay. Yeah.
Yeah, it was because the CEO of eBay ended up stepping down. Because these two people were writing, and this wasn't even a labor thing. This was like for people that use eBay as a small business.
Yeah.
They were like writing reviews about what are the best companies to deal with, and they had like all these real reasons, like, well, eBay is good for this, but bad for this. Maybe don't get involved. They were just breaking things down. It wasn't like strident lunacy or anything. It was a well thought out, like, maybe this isn't going to be good for your business, but that will. And yeah, they were like sending death threats to their house and like having people follow them around and sending like funeral arrangement flowers to their home and all stuff that would like clearly get you prison time. Because I think the guy like actually had a nervous breakdown because he thought his wife was going to get killed or something. Like, yeah. I know it's led to a civil suit that I was like, well, whatever you thought you were doing there, you just ended up costing eBay a lot of money. But I don't understand that level of dedication to your employer. It's just like, nope. I mean, I guess if you're getting big bonuses, maybe.
Well, there's this website called Glassdoor that's supposed to be kind of like an open-ended, like, hey, how good is your employer and stuff like that. And so people have basically been buying good reviews on Glassdoor, and then the Glassdoor's been figuring that out and then putting in like warnings on their site, like warning, they paid for good reviews. This is not a trustworthy company. And then they're going ape shit. It's like, no, we spent good money to falsify her. Like, we're a good company. You can't put that on her.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, that sounds like when Tony Soprano would get upset. Man, they're blowing up our spot here. This is our thing. Why are they fucking with us? You know, it's like, yeah, because you're a bunch of criminals. That's why. That was always the thing with him. Like, he was a smart guy, but he couldn't get past himself long enough to, I love that kind of stuff. Like,
so
hey, we paid good money for this grift.
We have Gene Hackman shows up as Pete Van Weary.
Yeah, that's interesting that Hackman showed up, and I had no idea he was in this movie. I totally forgot about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
I think he might even be uncredited. I'm not sure. Apparently, he's just friends with Warren Beatty. Yeah. And he got, I guess Hackman got Beatty the, crap. Who were the two that were robbing banks? It's Bonnie and Clyde. Hackman got Beatty the Bonnie and Clyde role.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't know
so
that.
so this was like kind of like a favor back to him because I guess Hackman's like career, wasn't great. I mean, he's doing like Poseidon Adventure and stuff like that. So he was just kind of, giving a role to his friend here. So, like I can't remember like when did Gene Hackman like really take off and they just started putting him in everything.
Probably the Superman movies when he played Lex Luthor.
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah.
The best Lex Luthor ever, like totally not the guy you think would play Lex Luthor, but then when you see it, it's like, oh, I buy this completely. But yeah, if you've ever read the comic books, it's like, yeah, Gene Hackman. Because Gene Hackman always reminds me of every smart asshole I ever knew in like Indiana. Like the guys, I think he's from there or the Midwest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's in Hoosiers, so that probably makes sense. So.
Let's see where I think Gene Hackman is probably from California. Totally. He's from. Let's see. He lived in Storm Lake, Iowa. He was born in San Bernardino, but it sounds like he lived in all over the place. But yeah, Gene Hackman sounds like the way he talks, like is every like guy I've known who's either a complete asshole or a genius in the Midwest. It's like that kind of like, God damn it, you got to listen to me. We're gonna do it this way because it's the right way, and almost crying, like people who are not used to being angry get really angry, where it sounds like they're almost ready to cry because they're not used to this level of emotion. That's a lot of people in the Midwest, because usually people in the Midwest are always like, "Hey, what's going on?" But then when they get angry, they're almost crying, which gives it legitimacy because it means they're not angry all the time. But it's like not a comfortable place for them. Well, at least most people in the typical Midwest. Not the Midwest I live in. The Midwest I live in, everyone's angry all the time, and they can't wait to yell expletives at you. That's just Detroit. It's a fun place.
Pete's saying that like all the people that Jack's hanging around, they're all a bunch of Reds, basically just citing the name of the movie. It's like, meaning communists. So. Yeah. Which I don't know, like, because how. I guess I don't actually know the history of communism, but is there any like established communist states at this point?
The Soviet Union's trying to.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fighting the White Army still, and they're going through I think at the time he's having that conversation with Gene Hackman, like I think they're into the famines at that point. I have to really I don't have a timeline on this history through other things, but no, it's all a concept.
Yeah,
because some of the greatest dialogue in this movie comes later with Maureen Stapleton when they're in Russia about this is terrible, right? We'll talk about it later, but it's like, at this point it's still an idea. Like, we don't know what a communist state will look like because Lenin hasn't I don't even know if have they pulled out of World War I at this time?
No, not yet.
Okay. Because that's when it really started. Because that's when the Russians have 7 or 8 different governments before Bolsheviks just overthrow them.
Because even when they go to Russia, Russia technically hasn't pulled out of the war just yet.
Okay.
But, because I know when I was a kid growing up, you were supposed to fear communism because they had the nuclear missiles and the wrong government. But I don't know at this time what you were supposed to fear about communism, other than like they're going to take all my money away.
Yeah, you were supposed to fear communism because guys like who was the guy, the oil guy? Damn it.
Like Rockefeller or something.
Yeah, guys like Rockefeller didn't like communism, so you weren't supposed to like communism. Believe it or not, at that time, the New York Times was like, communism is evil. Try to imagine that now. Then, that's what the voices were saying. That were like, the people that mattered, i.e., the rich people, were saying, hey, the communism is scary because Henry Ford can't have like 7 mansions or whatever. Just the same shit that goes on now. Like we said earlier, it's like we're still fighting the same fight. But,
I think like Pete's supposed to be an editor or something. I don't know. But they don't want him to print like pro-union capitalist critical articles. Yeah. Which I don't know, for a movie called The Masses or a magazine called The Masses, that seems like against its own like purpose. But I don't know.
Well, see, this was part of the problem. Now, remember, let's go back to the first part of it. Remember when they were in the house or the apartment in Greenwich Village, and all his friends were just talking in circular logic about all like, oh, what does the movement mean? What is it? And everyone couldn't get out of their own ass long enough to make a decision. All they did was argue with each other. That's like, it's just an extension of that throughout the whole movie.
Okay.
Because none of these people can get around long enough. Or I'm sorry, get along long enough to consolidate anything. And the reason that the communists and the socialists, especially in America, are that way is because they've never had power, they've never had one House of Representatives seat, never. So all they do is fight with themselves because they really can't fight against the Democrats and the Republicans because no one's ever going to put them in power. So that's,
Jack gets home to an angry Louise who's feeling like inadequate, that she's just living on Jack's coattails because she really wants to, spread her wings and fly, but she can't do that with under the shadow of Jack. And he's not really casting that shadow intentionally. He's just being himself. So,
Jack and Louise's relationship, like I said, it's the best part of the movie is the arguments these guys have. But they, it's like she's trying to be like a modern liberated woman, and he's trying to be like, yeah, I'm going to go along with that. But he is also like a writing and propaganda genius. So like when you're just standing next to a genius, and it's not to say she isn't talented or anything, but it's like she's always overshadowed by this guy, but doesn't have anything to do with his gender or who he is. It's just this guy is like is apparently some kind of savant of like propaganda and saying the right things at the right time. And she feels like deeply, it's like, I can't be me and be with you. That's like the sad thing in the movie.
Yeah. So Jack and Louise like kind of take a break, and they're out like at a beach. I don't know. Is this like, I don't know. This is like around the Hudson or something. Like, I don't know where they are.
Yeah.
When they go to the beach.
Yeah. The New York beach.
Yeah. They're doing like plays and poetry and stuff. And this kind of sequence is showing off that like Jack is getting into all this stuff, writing plays and poetry, but he's terrible at it. And this is supposed to emphasize like what a great reporter he is, because that's where he's really captivating, when he's writing about real things and trying like and detailing it to the readers, is like he really knows how to capture like a moment in time, but he's not good at like fiction.
Yeah, I like how they like let this scene marinate where they're trying to do these plays and the stuff he's writing, and it really looks like some Yoko Ono type performance art. So it's like, this is terrible. Why are they saying this is good? And it's like, oh no, they're not. They're showing that like this is not where his talents lie.
But this is Eugene's strength. This is the Jack Nicholson character. He's the poet of the group and the visionary when it comes to fiction.
And also has the best lines of dialogue in the movie when he's talking to people. I would love to talk to people like that about my art.
And then Jack gets called away to cover the election in St. Louis, because that's like, now he gets to be in his element again. But this is like, we're leaving. This is a constant thing where it's like he has to go do something, so Louise is alone again. which is what Eugene points it out, like
Yeah.
greatly throughout this movie. Yeah, Eugene just. That's why I like him in the movie, because he basically just says like everything, the truth out loud, and people don't like it. So
Yeah.
So yeah,
My
Louis.
favorite character in the movie is him. It's like, oh man, I wish I could talk like this and actually like be able to carry it off and be right.
Yeah.
These people are so frustrating to me with their bullshit sometimes. It's like, oh, this guy's doing it perfectly. I love what he's saying.
But he also gets in his own way, because even though he's right about everything, he's also just an asshole, and
Yeah,
nobody's
he's
going
a
to
terrible
follow
human
him.
being. Because people that talk like that are like that. It's actual reality. Like no one says that and then they like just leave the room for you to think about it. It's like, oh no, they're gonna just be in your face the whole time because they're right, they know it, and they want you to know it. They'll never leave you alone until you know it.
Louise finds Eugene looking for whiskey. He like criticizes her acting performance in some play they're working on.
Yeah.
They kind of flirt a bit or something, but he's like kind of like just chastising her. So it's like, wait, are they flirting, or is he just being critical of her? And it's like, it's both.
It's both.
And then there's a montage of the relationship. And I don't know if this is supposed to be like, this is a betrayal, even though they said like they're basically, her and Jack are taking a break, and they also essentially have an open relationship, which I guess is, would be weird at the time.
Well, it'd be weird now. I mean, it's strange even now.
Yeah, I guess.
As someone who's been in a marriage for 25 years, like if someone ever proposed that, I'd be like, well, no, the next step is divorce. We're not going through this interstitial period of, unless you're going to bring someone for me too, then that's called a foursome. That's a little different.
Yeah, I can barely get like people to like me, like even my friends, let alone have two people that like want to be intimate with me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean it's like everyone jokes about, oh man, it'd be great to have a threesome, but even in my life, like if someone I barely knew was like, take off your clothes, I would literally run from the room screaming. I'm still that backward of a person. Like it takes a lot of trust for me to. That's why when I see these things in movies and I mean, there's no threesome in this movie, but when they actually like talk about like, oh, they were doing this and that, it's like, how? That takes a massive amount of self-confidence. I couldn't even imagine having. It's like we can all tell jokes, but it's like, no, when the rubber meets the road, it's like, I'm not doing that. I would have, like I said, I would run out of the room like E.T. when they tried to give him a hot dog. I'd be like, what are you doing?
But that's a weird thing about people that are just famous, where especially with like musicians, where you just have ladies like lining up at the door, and it's like, all right, you go in and take your turn, and it's like, what is this? What are they getting out of it? Like, I guess that's just magnetism of art sometimes. It's like, this is your reward.
So I have a real people problem. I have a people disorder where I don't really get along with people or like people very much, but the people I do like, I really like, but the people I don't, I just like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Go do your thing. But yeah, when you get into this, like, oh, you're a stranger, we're going to have sex. I'm like, what? No way. That doesn't really happen. That's something you read about. No one's doing that, but it's like, no, that happens. It's like, wow, that's.
But I mean, I'm just talking about like, I don't understand like giving yourself to popular people just because like, oh, this person has like a magnetic personality, we must give ourselves to them. It's like, I don't understand that, but there's people lining up to do that. So
yeah, I don't get that either, but that's, like I said, generally I have a people problem anyway. So regardless of how charismatic someone is, I'm going to see like bad things. Like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not some woman who's like, been abused by society. And it's like, I'm looking for validation in any way, so I know it's different. I know groupies are their own weird thing.
It's a gathering of codependency issues. Like, Jack gets back in the middle of the night. He has flowers, but then he comes in through the back door and he sees Louise and Eugene in the shadow. Then he leaves, gets rid of the flowers, and then like returns to the front door, and everyone's like, "Hey, it's like Jack's back."
I was expecting a fight, but didn't happen. That's like, oh, these people don't do that kind of thing.
Well, maybe I forgot. Did they have that fight where it's not really a fight, where he just kind of like, she like tackles him on the bed and he like punches a door. Was that earlier on? I can't remember.
No, that's after, because she basically admits to him. It's like, well, I was sleeping with him, because she's like,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
and then he's like, yeah, I was sleeping with all kinds of people too. And it's like, no, he was like nursing his kidney, and it's like he really wasn't doing that, because he's just like, he wants to be this, writer, this guy, and he's emotionally unavailable because of this. So
But we cut to night and they're alone at night and she wants to talk about her relationship with Eugene, but then he kind of like senses that's what it's about, and so he kind of cuts it off and asks if she wants to get married before she says anything, and so then they kiss and it's like, oh, we're gonna get married. So next day she and Eugene talk and like she's apprehensive and like he's wounded because he's like, no, I love you and I'd do anything for you. Do you not understand like what a great privilege that is? And she's just like, you don't know Jack the way I do, so no, it isn't. It's
that's why I love his dialogue. Like, you don't know what I'm giving you here. You don't appreciate it, you stupid woman. It's just to have the presence of mind to just think like that. That's kind of cool.
Eugene has a love poem for Louise. She doesn't read it, but she does like keep it in like a book somewhere.
Leaves of Grass. Walt Whitman. I think that's what it is.
And then he lays into her again, but like leaves peacefully. We get back to the real interviews, and there's a revolution in Russia in 1917.
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson takes the country to war in a reverse on his campaign promise.
Yeah. Because remember that all the socialists were debating, and it's funny because of the Red Scare that's coming, like a year later. It's like, well, we got to go with Wilson. He's the closest we can get. He's going to keep us out of the war, and he's not a far right candidate. He's a Democrat. He's gonna. That's what, again, this is why when I hear the Democrats as communists, I always laugh. It's like, come on, these people have been screwing the communists over for 100 years.
Jack gets arrested publicly for opposing the war. This is also where we get like a look into his kidney issues.
Yes.
Which I don't know if that is like, is that like him drinking, or does he just have a kidney issue?
I looked it up because of course it's like, this is eventually like he dies young, and I think he dies in his like 30s, his early 30s. It was a problem, but I think it had more to do with like a genetic defect with his kidneys.
Oh, okay.
Than it was. I mean, he did drink a lot. Everyone did at that time. Because I think at some time there was like some propo put out that he was some kind of alcoholic, and that's why he died. But actually, it was actually more related to stuff that happened. Not only did he have a genetic kidney problem, but when he was in Russia, and it's like there wasn't a lot of good health care. I think in the movie they actually showed that too. It was like, no, he'll be fine. Drink this water, and it didn't work out that way. But,
there's an assembly here. We have Paul Sorvino as like an Italian immigrant.
That was interesting.
Plays
I forgot about this.
Luis Farina, I think is his name.
Yeah.
And then I wrote, hey. And I wrote, hey, it's Kit from Knight Rider. He's like leading the Socialist Party. Like, well, he's not leading. He's like the head speaker of the Socialist Party here. Then we come back. I think this is at the apartment because Jack finds Eugene's love note to Louise, and he's angry. But the tables are turned when like he basically admits to cheating as well as basically, well, he admits to it by like not saying anything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can't deny it. So now it's left to your imagination of how bad it is.
My reading of that scene was that he actually didn't cheat. He was just trying to be hurtful.
Yeah.
Or maybe he did. I don't know what guys were like back then. It's like I said, you could literally move a city over and be a different person back then.
Yeah.
Who knows what the hell was going on?
They have a physical altercation as she tries to leave. Like this where like he punches a door. Like he doesn't punch her, but she like tackles him on the bed and for something weird. It just ends up being like weird, but they're not hitting each other necessarily.
No, he's doing what they call the restraint stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, you can hit me, I'm not going to hit back. You can do whatever because I'm not gonna I'm not gonna lay hands on you, but I'm gonna block your exit. Like that's it.
uh,
And that happens in marriages. I'll tell you, it's like, yeah, go ahead, punch me, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna hit you back, but I'm not gonna let you leave either.
um, things calm down and then she leaves. Then we come back to the interviews and they're talking about affairs and stuff at the time.
Yeah, and I like a lot of these old communists. They kind of have a light in their eye, like we don't know if they were having affairs. Let's be surprised. There seems to be different people saying different things.
Yeah,
it's like that light never goes out, does it? Even you're 90 years old, you're still thinking about all the dirty little monkeys banging away. It's like I remember those days.
It's also funny, like in the interviews, like the people that are still like, like, hey, I'm still down with the cause. Those are the most lively, like kind of like progressive people, and all people that are very like conservative. It's like they're so slow and their mind is like really deteriorating.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Because like I said, all these communists and socialists in America, because they've never had political power, they are vigorous. They love argument, and they love to just get inside, get wrapped completely around the axle to where they're 180 degrees. They love it. I mean that's like everyone thinks like Noam Chomsky's a genius. It's like, well, no, he's just great at arguing because he's arguing a point of view that's never heard, that's never been tested. That's an important part too. And it's like, oh, this sounds like revealed truth. It's like, no, these people have never had power. So they're just it's real easy to credit. It's like I said, it's like outside the tent pissing in rather than inside the tent pissing out. It's like, it's a lot easier to piss in the tent because you're just like, yeah, I can throw acid on everything because it all sucks because I've never really had to be in charge of like the economy, the police, or anything else. So yeah, they do seem lively because they've had a lifetime of debate and debate, usually friendly debate with people who like, I am more left than thou and let me prove why. And then you got to deconstruct. It's like, no, you're not actually that progressive because you're still reductive in this way. I've heard these arguments. It's amazing. I just sit there and listen like, wow. But to me, it seems counterproductive because nothing gets done. Because I'm always like the middle of the road guy. It's like, look, let's take the best solution we can come up with, warts and all, and move forward. And then once that's in place, then we can build upon that. And then it's like, no, Nathan, you're building on a foundation made of shit. It must be perfect or it'll collapse. And it's like, but perfection never comes. Perfection never comes. You're wasting your time. Perfection only comes to God. And then they're like, no, there is no God. You're bringing God into it, and it's not right. Oh, Jesus Christ. But it's fun. Keeps you alive. Keeps your brain going.
So we have Act 3. It's Paris, 1917. Louise is in a restaurant. She went to Paris to cover the war. Jack has a kidney removed. He's not in Paris. This is just separate cuts.
Yeah.
And Jack and Louise are like exchanging letters throughout. And so she's always like telling him like crazy things, but like, and they're like signing off like, don't tell anybody.
Don't tell my boss. Don't say this. Can't publish that.
Jack sees Pete and they catch up and wants to write about the war, but like they want pro-war stuff because that's what's selling right now.
Yep.
And this is where he finds out that Louise was fired, and so he's like, well, wait a minute, what's she still doing in Europe in the middle of the war? She's fired, so he doesn't know if she's avoiding him or if she's what she's doing, but he wants to make it out to her.
Well, she's kind of like a bizarre like freelancer at this point, but she's basically getting paid by the day.
Yeah.
Which means she has to put herself in increasing levels of danger. And this is a woman in like what 1919 or something. It's like, oh, this is in World War I. It's like, this is nuts. Like she has some real balls.
Yeah, you don't want to be a woman alone around like degraded soldiers who think the end may come any time.
Yeah, the biggest rape armies in the history of the world are marching across Europe, and there you are, like, oh God.
She's here with a pen and paper.
Yeah.
So Jack makes his way to Europe in the middle of war, and he finds Louise. Jack's trying to convince Louise that they need to go to Russia because that's where the real story is. Because the communists there's all sorts of things going on. They keep creating provisional governments that keep collapsing. So he's like, I think communism is going to take hold or something. We'll see.
Well, this is the time, too, where the communists were split. I mean, you had Lenin and the Bolsheviks, and then you had, I forget the other, was it Trotsky? I don't know. You had the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks were the two people that were fighting for what kind of communism they wanted. Then you had a third group, they just called them the refuseniks because they basically said no to everything.
Yeah.
But they too were also communists. But at the end of the day, Lenin, like, you know, and the Bolsheviks carried the day. This is where like guys like Stalin, why they came to power later, because Stalin was basically Lenin's like hitman. Like, hey, we need some dirty work done. It's like, I'm your guy. And then because Lenin like had one of those hearts where it's like, yeah, quit eating chicken fat, Lenin, because you're gonna die, you know, at 40 because your heart's gonna fill up with you know, be blocked arteries and stuff. It's like, oh, then Hitler or then Stalin comes to power. Basically, Russia's Hitler. Yeah.
Jack gets on a train to Petrograd, and Louise says goodbye, but then she gets on the train just moments later and makes demands that they be like a writing team, but like, you know, like get equal credit for everything. So
Yeah.
they have their own communism within the relationship.
Which is actually good on her, because it's like, it's the only way I can stand apart from you is if we do this a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's going to be all Jack and no me. I think she just does something like that too.
They see the horrors of war at a train stop, and here's the figure out the Bolsheviks want them out of the war, and so that's like a big thing. They also see like, you know, kids are being conscripted and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, let's get them out of the war. That's all they got left is 13-year-olds with rifles that don't work. Then we have some interviews about the Bolsheviks. I don't know if you have it. I don't even know. Yeah, like, you know this stuff. I don't even know like who the Bolsheviks were.
They were just a form of communists. That basically, I think the Bolshevik branch of communism like disbanded in the 50s because it just became one communism in Russia.
Okay.
But yeah, they were the group run by you know, Lenin. That's where the term like Marxist-Leninist, have you heard that word? It's like, that was his version of Marxism, was what Lenin came. Lenin, arguably the most influential man of the 20th century. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but it's like, he basically set the stage for everything. Not a good guy. Not a hero, not a conventional hero. Especially with the stuff he did in Russia, like I mean, because because there's a Ukraine war going on, all the famines in Ukraine and things like that. Yeah, that was all like Lenin. It's like, we'll starve them out. We'll take their food and feed ourselves because they didn't get with the program. And so there was a bunch of different communism philosophies competing for power in Russia while they were fighting a civil war, because you have what's called the White Russians. Those were the people that were loyal to the Tsar and all that. And then you had the communists. And like I said, you had the Bolsheviks, the Mensheviks, and I'm probably mixing a lot of this up because it's like a huge complicated history. But yeah, long and short of it is like Lenin was like probably the most important guy in the 20th century because he like set the stage for what became the Soviet Union. And essentially, if you look at what the Soviet Union became and what the United States became, it's like, oh, the end of the world was in play because of the the system that he alone started. Like the United States had a lot of important figures, but we have a democracy and each guy builds upon the other and all that. This all goes back to Lenin, like what Russia became when it went from being just this backwater to this power. It's like that. The people who built the foundations for that were the Bolsheviks and Lenin. And then once he died, because I think he died in like his 50s, but his health was declining. Like his health started going to serious decline when he was roughly my age now. So he had about 5 more years to live, but it was in very declining health because he was one of those guys that had that like genetic defect that, you know, if he ate a lot of fat, it's like it just plugged all his arteries up. He died from a combination of bad diet and just, you know, major heart blockages. Probably had multiple strokes before the one that finally killed him, and no one knew about it. So that's why guys like Stalin, because if you wonder like how a bastard like Stalin came into power, is like, oh, he was his ultimate henchman of Lenin. Like he's like, oh, we want you to kill the Cossacks. We want you to bring the Ukrainians in line. And we're not going to ask a lot of questions. And Stalin was like, yeah, cool. Actually, Stalin isn't a real person. That was just his nom de guerre. He was actually a Georgian priest named Zugashvili. So that's who Stalin. Stalin wanted to be a priest, but he decided to change his name, and because Stalin means man of steel. It's kind of weird.
Well, at this point, have they killed off all the royals, or is that what you call the aristocracy?
Yeah, White Russia is the that was Tsar Nicholas and his wife, the Tsarina, which was like, it was a weird time because the Russians were the last country to have royalty. Like they were still like a peasant society. I mean, Russia was still like, because like they have the king. Like we just had a new king crowned in England. We had all that recently, and it's like that was all tradition by then. But in Russia, it's like, yeah, the Tsar was the center of political and economic power, and it was basically just this huge peasant state. And but the Tsar Nicholas and his wife were as stupid as farm animals. And they allowed guys like you've heard of Rasputin and all his crazy shit. Yeah, they were just dumb enough to let this lunatic priest come into their life and like, oh, I'm going to tell you the future, and you're going to rule by superstition and mysticism. And eventually, like as people were starving to death and the country was dying, and they're like, yeah, we got to kill these people. So then, so they were killed. They weren't entirely killed by the communists. There was a lot of different groups involved, but the communists ultimately came to power. But yeah, by the time in the movie Reds, where they're like in Europe and wanting to head to Russia, I think the Tsar had already been killed, and they were forming different governments in Russia, trying to prevent the Bolsheviks from taking over, and Bolsheviks, not Bolsheviks, Bolsheviks taking over. So yeah, that's where we're at in the movie. Sorry, I was trying to take too many breaks into my weird half understood world, but yeah.
And for your Disney aficionados, I think this is around the same time as Anastasia.
Watch that if you really want to know what's going on.
It's about her family being killed, right, and running away. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because there was always like, oh, there's a secret princess left that's going to bring, return the czars to Russia. No, but Putin killed them all.
I have a line here that says, "There's talks of peace and bread, but Kerensky provides neither."
Yeah, Kerensky was the first attempt at a legitimate parliamentary government in Russia. No one remembers them, but yeah, that was because they had like 7 republics in like as many years under him, and they just couldn't, because they invited the communists to the table, and the communists just were like, no, and so it just all kept collapsing. The communists just wanted to take over.
We kind of have a montage of Jack and Louise are busy writing about politics. They also have probably about politics in Russia, and they also have like their kind of apartment that's kind of quaint for them, which seems like it's like some kind of repurposed something. I'm not sure if it's meant to be an apartment, but because I think I can't remember. They come back to it later, and it's also falling apart, but I think it's like furtherly falling apart later on. But here it's kind of quaint. It's like, oh yeah, the handrails are falling down. It's like, oh well, that's just the character. Yeah. Sometimes disrepair is a character trait. Yeah. They go to an assembly where the workers are threatening a strike. Jack gets pulled onto the stage to talk about workers in America, and so they have like people translating for him and stuff like that. But people start like listening to him. And they're like, no, there's Americans against the war, and if you withdraw from the war, like America, there will be Americans with you. And so there's like a roar from the crowd and a frenzy to quit the war.
Yes, this was became later, and I believe it's attributed to Reed. It later becomes like the what do they call it? The revolt of the international proletariat. Like this is something the Russians talked themselves into. Like if we do this, this will happen in Germany, this will happen in France and America, and it's like very naive, but it's exciting.
But this is where you can see where Jack just like, this is his drug, is attention and people listening to him. So.
Yeah, he's not being I'm a reporter reporting the facts. It's like, no, I'm trying to sway opinion now. and I'm apparently doing a good job, even though I don't speak the language, because I have these guys that essentially volunteer, and it's like the Russians that volunteer to translate for them. It's like, oh, this is like the Russians that try to sell you stuff on the streets here. It's like, come here, I help you, my friend. Yes, come say something, speak, buy this phone. It's a calling card. It's good. It's only $500. You can call for eternity. It's the same kind of shit that goes on. I always love how the Russians are characterized. Because this guy's trying to create a job for himself being Jack's translator. He appears later in the movie. It's the same guy.
Oh, okay.
At least that's what I thought. That's what I wanted to see.
There's a montage of like revolution, and then also parallels this with Jack and Louise falling in love again. Because at this moment, they're not like back again. They're just like, working together. I mean, now they've like found love again. And then I wrote, Lennon takes power? ?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because Lennon shows up in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, he never looks happy. It's like, well, yeah, knowing his history, he wouldn't.
Then we got intermission. So time to go get your popcorn.
Yeah, time to take a leak, get your popcorn.
We have some more interviews, and we come back to Act 4, New York, 1918. Jack and Louise are coming back through customs. The custom officers like take all his articles that are like, I don't know, like written in Russian. I'm not sure. They're like, yeah, the government needs this. This is weird propaganda. And then Max.
This is also the time of the Wilson's Red Scare.
Okay.
So, and this is like Eugene Debs and other bunch of labor organizers in the U.S. were put in prison, not for actually committing crimes, but for just being considered,
suspected.
Leftist labor organizers and stuff. It's like if you really want to understand this time in America, and you read, there's a book called The Fall of the House of Labor. It sounds boring and dense. It's not. It's actually pretty cool. I had to read it in a labor studies class I took through the union. And it's like, oh, wow. It's like, if you think things are bad now, they were actually putting people in prison or beating their heads in with riot batons under Wilson, Democrat president. Remember, Democrats is communists and socialists. Like, weird shit. Saying dumb stuff.
We have Max, played by Edward Herman. He shows up there to greet them. Louise is being interviewed by Congress, I believe, because she calls one of them a senator. So, I'm not sure what capacity. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was what was the Overman Committee? What did they do? It's basically like a precursor to who's the guy, McCarthy, like the House on American Activities Committees in the 50s or whatever. Okay, this was like the nascent child of that.
Okay.
So this is called the Overton. Oh, I'm sorry, Overman, not Overton. That's a whole different political philosophy. Overman Committee. Yeah.
They want to know if she's an atheist and a communist.
Because that's important.
And then she advocates that in Russia, women have the right to vote, and she doesn't, which is a salient point that they're like, oh, come on.
come now, but they don't have potatoes. Woman, I don't know why the guys, like, it was the South Carolina senator. I don't know what he's talking about. That's just how I imagine it.
That's the sound of oppression.
Can you eat your ballot because you don't have any food? Silly woman. Oh, God. She's menstruating. Get her out. Sound like Stewie from Family Guy.
Or some weird character in some alternate history version of America in like a Doctor Who episode.
Of course we put down the revolution. Dirty colonists. Just start talking like that all the time. Well, Nathan's into time travel and mental illness.
Jack visits Emma in prison, one of his friends. I didn't write down the actor's name, but she won the best supporting actress for this movie.
Maureen Stapleton? Yeah, she's amazing in everything.
Yeah.
She's like, where do I remember her the most? I think she did some Twilight Zone episodes I really like. Okay. She was like born in like 1920 or something.
But she's like an Irish immigrant, and here they're like deporting anybody who's an immigrant for having socialist ideals. Jack is like comically cooking for Louise. So you think like, oh, he's like a Renaissance man until he like fails at cooking. So
Yeah.
it's like, I
Things
guess
are on
not.
fire and burning.
The
It's like, oh no.
whole bottom of one pot just like comes loose because it was burning too hot. So.
Yeah, I've never seen a pot get that hot. It's like, wow, you just like the metal, like the melting point of steel is like almost 2,000 degrees. That's a hell of a. I think it was one of those spring pan pots.
And then like I think he's attempting to make Thanksgiving dinner or something because there's a turkey at one point, but then yeah, he comes out with some, barely edible thing, and they're like, he's like, is it good? She's like, yeah, and lying about it. He's like, oh, awesome.
It's not terrible. Oh, by the way, Emma Goldman was born in the Russian. It was called the Russian Empire. So,
huh?
she wasn't Irish. She was Russian. She was being deported to Russia. That's important for like.
Oh, okay.
The scene in the movie later.
Okay, yeah, because like I thought it was weird that like I thought she was Irish and they deported her to Russia. I was like, well, that seems weird. So okay, that makes more sense then. Okay.
No, I mean the actress is probably Maureen Stapleton's probably Irish ancestry.
Okay.
She looks like an Irish lady. So.
Well, I thought that's the action she had. I mean, I don't know. I watched this a week ago, so I don't know if we could be missing something.
She's just some old communist. She's a communist from New York. That's all you need to know.
Because
remember, all the communists were Jews back then. I mean, that's what the New York Times will tell you back then. Not now, back then.
And then this is like the one thing like I've like heard this. This is like the only thing from this time. They're like, oh, I've heard that, and they talk about Jack Reed's book, 10 Days That Shook the World. I never read it, but I've heard the title. So
I've read it. Very it'll make you believe in the revolution. It's like, this is amazing. I mean, I had to read it again, it was labor studies stuff that I used to do because I wanted to be one of those educated union members because I thought it would make a difference. But then I realized, I don't have the personality to deal with people's labor things because I come to work every day and it's like, oh, you're basically a company, man. It's like, no, we just signed a contract that said I would be at work except if I use my 9 days off or I get surgery or something, which I can't control. But, oh, you're just a company, man. So it's like, yeah, I have all this labor education background that I never use. So yeah, I read that book. It's a great book. You should read. I think it's like 98 pages. It's basically a bunch of articles that were consolidated into a book. So those are really fast reads.
Yeah, his book's basically about his time he spent in Russia and and the social, and it's seen as the government as socialist propaganda.
He is the only reason I admire Lenin and Orwell. Because I like George Orwell like tied Animal Farm off of this book.
Okay.
I've always really on our old intro for the other podcast I had a lot of Orwell drops and it's like, oh yeah, because this goes hand in glove with that too. So it's a great book though if you want to like be a nascent communist and really believe in this stuff. Oh wow, this is awesome. And then you study history and you're like, oh.
Jack,
you realize there's only 2,000 calories in a pound of bacon and you're trying to watch what you eat and it's like, well, we need 2,000 calories to get through the day, so a pound of bacon every day, right? No, no. So, yeah.
Jack is like a part of the heads of the Socialist Party here, but then there's a split in the party, people vying for control. And then there's a gathering at Jack's house and they're trying to strategize how to get back into the party because they got kicked out. Here's one guy who's named Eddie. He screws up a meeting with Levine, which is kind of a weird point because it's like really focusing on, it's like, well, why didn't he wait for you? It's like, I got there late because I had to take care of it. Well, why didn't you call somebody? So, yeah. I thought I could handle it. Then we got to Chicago. It's 1919. They crash a Socialist Party meeting and force their way in. And then Jack and his group are like thrown out and they go to the basement to hold their own meeting. Which is like, oh, it's weird how, because it's basically, it's like they all gather in and they just start like yay or nay and voting on things all of a sudden, like this is how you do it. And they just like, it's like an automatic routine. And it feels like something's getting done when it's like, I don't feel like anything's taking hold here, but that's a neat scene, I guess, for what's going on. When there's literally like the rest of their party's up above them, so they're just doing what they can.
Oh
Um,
yeah, you'll learn. I've been to things like this at labor meetings, at union meetings. You got something called Robert's Rules, where you have to like call for like, oh, I want to call for a vote on this point of order. There's I used to know how the form worked, but yeah, basically you could like form a subgroup, because if you tried to do it at the main group, they'd be like, you're out of order, that we don't recognize you. You can't propose anything. So then you form your own little weird group, but you operate under the same rules. And it's like, well, I want to do this. And then everyone votes in your little group, like, yeah, yeah. And so you're like, well, we did it. So it's part of the standing committee's like vote. It's like, no, it isn't, and you just go back and forth. It's like basically it's whoever can yell the loudest or get the most threatening will like push it through. But it's not that, but it becomes that. It's fun. Especially when you're trying to like make sure people have health care or stuff. It's like, I'm gonna stand in your way. It's like, why? Okay. Yeah, do it. I'm a piece of shit.
There's a debate about who's going to be a communist Labor Party of America, which I think they're talking about basically being like, no, yeah, this comes later on. Anyway, things are moving fast and with emotion, and Louise is like none too pleased by this because the sudden cause to send Jack to Russia as a delegate for the party. She's like, oh, he's gonna go away again and not bring me.
Yeah.
But also here's where like Jack is realistic about like a revolution in America and how it's not going to work if it's led by immigrants, which is true. It's like,
yeah, I was like, he's not wrong.
Which actually, like Jack, when he like as he's talking about communism, he is like, well, there's downfalls here. This isn't going to work immediately or at all, probably. But these sentiments are true and need to be like adhered, or we need to at least try.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I like about Jack as a character. Like, he's realistic about what America is, and it's like, yeah, we're not going to form a communist party and just take over America right away. This is going to happen like Russia, which is just a disorganized peasant. Actually, communism has only happened in disorganized peasant societies where there's a leadership vacuum, because that was Russia, China, Cuba, and a few of those other countries where it took off. It's like it never didn't happen in like the UK or France or any of those countries. So yeah, he was realistic about like what the chances of this were, but he was idealistic enough to think it mattered.
Yeah,
which is, you got to respect the guy for that, even though it's all kind of bullshit. Yeah, it's his passion is enviable.
Well, it's like the pie in the sky is like we get government control. What he really wants is just workers' rights.
Yeah, which is what I want too. It's why I see him as a sympathetic character. It's like, yeah, I don't want to govern everything. It's health care for people and a pension.
Yeah,
I don't want people to work into their 80s. Like, that's and non-productive also, because you just end up making exceptions for them. It's like, this isn't efficient. You're talking about efficiency, but there's no efficiency in someone work until they're dead. What, are you a communist? It's like, no, actually, I'm using your logic against you, but that's okay.
Louise thinks Jack is mesmerized by running around the world and creating excitement, which he is. That's what he likes to do.
Yeah. He's a propagandist.
Jack says he'll be back for Christmas, and Louise can't tell. She can't tell him if she'll be there when he returns. So that's kind of a lingering thing.
And again, another great argument scripted between Warren Beatty and Diane Keaton. Who's always been wildly sexy too, in a strange, like, intelligent girl way,
Yeah, I don't know. Like, what was it? Annie Hall was kind of like one of her big movies. I've never seen any of what's his name's movies, but she was just like the quirky, intelligent girl in that movie that everybody liked.
Oh yeah, because
I've never seen it, but
yeah.
Because that's like all of, what is it? Woody Allen. I could never watch it. I've never seen any of his movies.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah, I hear that's good, but I've almost never seen any of his movies. Although weirdly enough, Chris Rock, huge fan of Woody Allen movies. And then Jack like sneaks into Russia because you can't just go there. It's forbidden from America.
Oh, it's America, Britain, and I think all the basically the Allied powers.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, it's actually blocked. That's the part of history because they'll talk about like the famines in the collectivization of what became the Soviet Union and like how horrible the communists in Russia were and why all these people starved, but they don't tell you like, oh yeah, but we like physically blockaded them from importing food and couldn't sell them stuff, and we would like sink their ships if they tried to because a blockade is just an act of war. Because what a blockade means is like, well, if you send your ships out here, we'll sink them, which is like that's war. That's like warfare. Yeah. So, but they never tell you. They always tell you how horrible, like the Soviets were, and they were. They were. You wouldn't want to live under that regime. I'm not pro-Soviet by any means, but they don't tell you. It's like, oh yeah, but we like all the other imperialist powers in the world, which is why the Soviets always called us imperialists. Basically, lined up against them and said, yeah, we don't care if millions of people starve. We don't like your political philosophy, so we're gonna, suffocate you. Which is kind of weirdly like been Russia's role ever since.
Louise goes to see Eugene. Like he kind of puts her in her place. It's like, oh, Jack's gone, and now you're here to see me because you're bored.
Again, best dialogue in the movie.
And once again, Jack's just leaving you alone because he's like, he sees the bright shiny light and chases after it, and you're alone again. It's like, I wouldn't do that to you.
Let me just grind salt into this wound. Yes, because I'm,
But I mean, she also puts him in his place too, where it's like, oh, you just want to control everything, so it's all yours, and so you can leave this little happy life. So
yeah, because you don't believe in anything. And just the classic Jack Nicholson look while it's going on, like, I don't know how he does it, but yeah, he has a way of turning his head and looking at people like, are you stupid?
It's a look that can talk.
Mm-hmm.
I guess also I was just
like, he's good at acting.
Also, like at this time, like Warren Beatty and Diane Keaton were dating in real life, and basically their relationship was falling apart in the middle of this movie, which probably makes it better and worse in a lot of ways. So
it lends some legitimacy to it, that's for sure.
I don't know, because like whenever people like talk about like when there's like a movie romance and people talk about like they have chemistry, and like I can never read that stuff. I can't tell you whether someone had chemistry or not. Like whenever someone says like screen chemistry, I'm like, I don't know, Speed, because apparently it's like Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves, they have chemistry, but I don't know really what that means. It's just like I like both people and they're in the same scene together. It's like whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if they like secretly yearn for each other, and I don't care because I don't understand people. Like I said, people are a complete mystery to me, because really in my life, people are randomly happy, angry, and or disappointed with me, and I have no idea why most of the time, unless I'm actively doing things to like work against them or help them. I don't know why people are happy or angry or disappointed with me in any way. It's just, and I'm also like tell people exactly what I'm doing. It's like, well, this is what I'm doing, and this is why. Oh, I don't know about that, Nathan. It's like, no, I told you why I'm doing it this way. I don't think that's the right way. It's like, no, I've evaluated it, and this is the way I'm going to do it. I think you're wrong. It's like, well, tell me why. It doesn't feel right. Okay, well, I'm not talking to you anymore. And then everyone's mad at me. It's like, okay, great, whatever. It's like, it's not like I matter or make decisions that change anything. So you can hate me, cool, or like me. I won't know why either way. So yeah, when you talk about chemistry in movies, like I don't have any idea what you're talking about. I think these are good actors and or actresses delivering complicated dialogue in a believable way. Like they don't stumble over their lines or use a lot of pauses in their speeches. So I assume it's good. Because I don't know how to critique things like that.
Louise, it's at night. She's at home. Louise goes looking for her dog, and it suddenly turns into like a horror movie where there's just like weird sounds and like running back in the house, and there's just darkness is creeping in. And then the cops just storm in looking for Jack, and they have a warrant for his arrest for sedition.
Yep. true. That really happened.
We cut to some interviews like of the real people, and they talk about in 1919 only 4 Americans were allowed to go to Russia, so illegally is the only way to get in there.
Well, not just Americans, like anyone.
Yeah, yeah.
You couldn't go there from Europe. You couldn't go there. There was no, even the countries that bordered Russia, it was like you would face sanction by the UK, the US, all the, basically the allied powers of World War I would, like, they'd crush your economy if you allowed people to travel back and forth. Or sell them grain for their starving people. It's like, couldn't do that either. I mean, if you did, the communists would just take it and give it to the people who wanted to. It's not like it was all evil on one side. There was evil on both sides. I'm not saying that they were all good fuckers. So before you tell me, I know how bad it was, at least from the books. I didn't actually experience it, but
then we cut to a meeting in Russia where Jack is, and he's meeting with a dude who's like eating a lemon with an onion because it's like he's trying to fight scurvy and eat. So
he's basically like a Borat's great grandfather. That's what the guy looks like.
I think that's actually the co-writer. This is the guy.
Is it okay? I knew it was somebody who looks strange but very believable. Is it like a pre-Soviet apparatchik party guy?
Let me see here. Is that the guy? Crap.
Was it Radek who he was talking to?
Oh no, never mind. The co-writer isn't this guy, but I think he's a friend of Warren Beatty, and he's co-written with other stuff with him. But because like I believe was mostly a writer, and this was like one of his acting roles that he doesn't usually do. So
all right, well, keep synopsizing. I gotta let my dog out real quick.
All right.
Whining.
Jack is arguing for the endorsement from the Russian government, because he's trying to get like basically the support of an entire country to support the socialist movement in America, but here the communists are surrounded on all sides by enemies of communism. So yeah, like everybody bordering Russia is like, yeah, we can't do that. If we let communism's taking hold in Russia, we can't let it take hold anywhere else, or it's going to upset our economy. You can't upset the economy. He sits on a committee where they deny his endorsement, and he tells them to like they should merge the American Communist Labor Party. So like the separate group that Jack created and the other socialists, like he's just telling them like, yeah, merge it together and work. Yeah, that doesn't matter. Like your separate bit of it isn't important. Just like it's putting it together is the best thing. Then Jack gets put in his place by Zanayev because like after they tell him just to merge the parties together in America, he's like, well, I'm gonna resign and leave, and then he's like, what? Like when it gets hard, you're just gonna quit communism?
Yeah, I like that.
It's like we all have sacrifices. You think I don't have a family? It's like I'm here doing this crap. It's like, I love my family, but like a country's got to get put together. So that's the sacrifice I make. Why can't you make that sacrifice?
Yeah, this was like one of the few times where like the Comintern in the Soviet Union was actually legitimate. Like I do like that dialogue section because they were really actually like trying to propagate international communism, and they gave him like really good advice, like stop fighting amongst yourselves.
Yeah,
it's like but after that the Comintern just became just a tentacle of the Soviets trying to spread anti-American communism around the world. But like at this time it was great that he went and sought their guidance because that was the only place that communism was going on. And they were like, yeah, quit arguing amongst yourselves. Like that's that's like a bourgeois luxury to argue against yourself. Like we're fighting for the people. Of course, all that got wiped away in the Soviet Union in matter of 5 years. But it was nice to think that like, this guy was actually showing them what to do.
So because Jack doesn't get it, even though he gets us talking to, and Jack doesn't get what he wants, he runs off. So he takes a hand cart on a train tracks, and one old time we were like, you pump it to move along.
Yeah, I was waiting to see like the film sped up, and it was like that, like black and brown scale where it was like he's pumping the hand cart to try to outrun something, but Finnish guys with rifles waiting for him.
Yeah, he gets to the Finnish border and picked up and taken prisoner by Finland. And the U.S. doesn't want anything to do with Jack, and for various reasons. So he's just stuck in this prison as they're trying to get information about Russia, and so yeah, he's just stuck there. Because also, like, he doesn't have a passport.
Point. So at this point, they couldn't make him into like an MK Ultra assassin.
But also, he snuck into Russia, so he doesn't have any papers, saying where he's been or a passport. Well, he might have a passport. I'm not sure, but
yeah, he couldn't get a stamp to go there, so essentially you went in without papers. So it means if you come out, you're like an uncitizen because we don't want you because you're a commie.
Louise goes to Eugene on traveling to meet Jack because she still thinks he's in Russia, so she's trying to get to Russia. Eugene offers to go in her stead because it's like, hey, it's dangerous there. Like, you're there in the war and you didn't get raped. You're definitely going to get raped now with the revolution going on.
Yeah, going into Russia, like, it's like basically like going into a nation of orcs. It's not going to be good.
But she insists on going herself. Louise is stowed away in a ship in a storm, and she's like getting seasick. We cut to Jack as being checked on by a Finnish doctor who like purports to be a communist. I wrote purports because I didn't know. It's like, is this going to be a turn? But like, no, it's just, it was honest. He's a communist. There's a cool scene here. Like, Louise is like caught in the woods somewhere, and there's like a caribou stampede or something. Like, it looks really cool.
Yeah, it was a great scene. It was like, wow, this is nuts. This chick is incredibly brave.
Yeah, and just some old like hunters there taking her. It's like, let's go.
Yeah, you think this guy's gonna be like, oh, he's gonna take her to some like cabin in the woods and like torture her to death or something. No, he's actually a good guy. He's just some crazy old Lapland hunter or something. I don't know what he is, but the people that follow the caribou. Well, I don't know what they're called, but yeah, one of those people.
She knows he's in jail because she's trying to get to Finland at this point. So I think,
yeah,
right, yeah, because that's where she ends up. So yeah, she must know he's in jail. So, because Jack gets released when some of the Bolsheviks trade like with the Finnish government. Like, apparently they had some professors that they had hostage or whatever and gave it to him in exchange for Jack. Yeah. So now Jack's out of prison and in a place.
Which is kind of weird considering one of Lenin's favorite quotes was, "We need to kill more professors." Like, oh, they're bringing him back to kill him. That's what I thought, but maybe.
Well, no, they gave the professors to Finland, so.
Yeah. It's like you think Lenin won't.
So they're on the chopping block. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is important because Louise has no way of knowing that Jack got released from prison. So it's like, oh, this is going to end poorly.
Yeah, he couldn't send her a text.
Petrograd, 1920. Jack gets off a train and he wants to send a telegraph to Louise, but he doesn't know that she's on her way to try to find him. Jack meets with Emma, who is in Russia now because she got deported. This is where he learns that Louise is not in New York anymore, and he's thinking that she like ran off with Eugene, like because Emma doesn't know like what happened to her either. She's just
almost throwing shade, as they say.
Yeah. This basically is like, oh, she doesn't like Louise. It's like, oh, I didn't get that earlier in the movie, but it's like, yeah, she just thinks the worst in her. Jack goes to the apartment they stayed in during like the revolution, but there's like no one there. I mean, it is like full of like there's a crib and all this stuff, but like nobody lives in there, and it's in further disrepair, which I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but yeah, it's just. Louise makes it to the Finnish prison and find out that Jack has been released, and then she stares for a long time at the icy water outside the prison. And then there's a meeting amongst the communists from different countries. Louise shows up here. What the right? Louise shows up here. He asks if Jack is okay. What? I can't remember this. Is this where they meet up again? No, I don't think.
No.
Okay.
They don't meet up again until after his train is attacked. I think.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Or maybe that's supposed to be. I don't know what the hell. Anyway, there's that meeting amongst how Jack gets voted against, and so he resigns from the committee. Like once again, there's talk with Emma and says that like the bureaucrats have created a new power dynamic where the workers still aren't in power. And power is still being controlled by the few because so like the system isn't working. So like when you have a bunch of farmers kill everybody in government and now they're in the government roles and they're not good at it, you're not gonna have a great government. Like because these aren't
they even say that. They say it's like having a bunch of illiterate peasants run the country. It's a failure. Imagine that, you know. And the Russians saying it was like, oh yeah, we kind of fucked that up.
So Jack goes back to the committee and he tears up his resignation, and they send him to the Middle East to spread communism.
He goes to Baku, actually, in Azerbaijan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I did not know they had camels in Baku.
They do. It's that's like the Soviet Middle East.
Oh, okay.
That's a Borat country.
Yeah. Great F1 race, usually, except it was terrible this year.
Yeah, but at least they had one, you know.
So have that be in the end of Act 4. You know, everything's sad. Louise and Jack are apart, and Jack's getting sent off to the Middle East, or I guess not the Middle East, Azerbaijan.
Yeah, the Middle East, Soviet Middle East is what we'll call it. Yeah.
Is that the Black Sea, the Azerbaijan borders?
Let me look it up. I know they have cool buildings there. Let's see. During the Soviet period, they were independent for 1 year before the Red Army marched in 1921 and took them back. Let's see. Geography. Baku is situated on the western coast of the Caspian Sea in the vicinity of the city. There's lots of mud volcanoes and salt lakes.
I always like the name Azerbaijan because it sounds like a perfume commercial. Azerbaijan.
It's a cool place. June, July, and August, the median temperature is 104 to 108. That is, you are in the Middle East at that point. Or we can be real British about it and say it's Central Asia. Okay, cool. You mean the Middle East?
So the Act 5, a communist propaganda painted train rolls through. A crowd like greets them. There's different people. There's people riding camels, donkeys, and horses. They're just coming out. They're burning Uncle Sam in effigy. Like that's right. That's what that means, right? When you burn a figure that looks like somebody, it's called burning them in effigy.
Yes. I've done it in my backyard many times for my enemies. My biggest regret in my life is I was never able to fulfill the violent oaths I swore against my enemies. So son would build effigies in the backyard and I would burn them. And the neighbors would come over. It's like, things going okay at home? It's like, yeah, I'm just burning my enemies in effigy.
Is it Zanayev or is it Zinoviev?
Zinoviev.
Zinoviev and his translators are like rallying the people for, communism.
Yep.
We got to
full Middle Eastern garb. And like what Jack's saying, they're like patting him on the back and like, yes. And he finds out they're mistranslating what he's saying in English.
Well, it's a little bit late because here he's like speaking from the train, but that's later when they're like speaking from the circle thing later on.
Okay, I thought it was the same scene, but okay.
I think so. I mean, again, I usually watch this the day before we do this, but it ended up being
yeah, because I had to build steps and because I'm not a good carpenter.
No, it's not. This is also just an absurdly long movie, so yeah,
this movie's a little too long. I love it, but it was like, I could imagine, but they really couldn't cut anything out of it.
Yeah,
Because if they did, it would be like, well, you could either cut all this political stuff out of it, or you could cut the romance and the love triangle out of it. And if you did that and it was 90 minutes, it would suck. It's like, why are these people doing this stuff? It's like, we don't know.
Also, like, I could watch 5 episodes of a 1-hour drama right in a row and not bat an eye, but somehow it's like, oh, it's a 3-hour and 15-minute movie, and it's like, oh, so I don't know what the hell it is. You know, it's just
Psychological is what it is.
Yeah.
That's why I have all these guns. It's like, I'll never use them, and politically, like, kind of aligned against, crazy right-wing gun ownership. But I'm right there with them because it's like, oh, this is cool. But it's like completely implausible. Anyway, go ahead.
Emma's like dealing with where is it? Oh yeah, Emma's dealing. So we're back in Russia, and with Emma, she's dealing with incompetent officials because again, they're just illiterate farmers.
Yeah.
And
also they hate women.
Yeah. And here she
Russians
spots
are very, very lovely towards women too.
Here she spots Louise. Like, she can't believe that she sees her there. Louise goes back to Emma's, where like Emma's like saying she was wrong about Louise. Like, oh, I thought you were a loser. I didn't know you actually like, devoted to Jack and.
Or basically, like, it was like, oh, you showed some stones, like, getting
here. Yeah.
Like you really love it because you like were riding a yak across desert, or what do they call it? Tagaya. What are the frozen wastes? The tundras. Yeah.
Through Tunguska.
Yeah.
Right before, or wait, when was that was that meteorite crashed around this time? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, we got to look this up. The movie.
Tunguska event. 1908. So we're about 12 years after this, but at this point.
Oh, okay. That's too bad.
Yeah, but the felled trees and that big circle's got to be there around this time. I know we picked that up, right?
They should go there. They estimate that was a 12 megaton explosion. Whoa, don't do it. Okay, sorry. It was about to play a loud video.
We cut to Jack. This is where they're in some building that has like these weird like circular like pedestals that people are staying up, and they're like yelling at everybody. And this is where everyone's getting translated into a bunch of different languages.
Yeah.
Jack is giving a speech and he's like losing energy, and then suddenly the crowd is like charged up and chanting about a holy war against the West. And this is basically like, wait, what'd you just say?
This is Allahu Akbar before it was cool. Because essentially they were translating it as like some kind of holy war against infidels, and which is. And then they try to walk it back like, I know you're not translating me right. And it's like, well, we're speaking a language they understand. And it's like, no, you're talking about like religious murder. That's not, what we're doing. I mean, he doesn't say it like that, but that's essentially what he's saying is like, this isn't the same thing. This isn't God. This is, this is like, a political philosophy.
But it's basically this like the point where you realize like, oh, Zinoviev is basically like his new editor, and he hates that. It's like, you don't edit me.
What, the Russians lie? Can't say that out loud.
And then the train is attacked, and Jack like runs away from the train. And he's chasing after a carriage.
In the movie is when the White Army attacks the train back to Petrograd.
Yeah. Then we cut to like the shot up train makes its way back to Russia, where Louise is waiting. There's like people cheering them. It's like, look, like almost everyone survived, but Jack is not on the train, and she watches a stretcher being carried away. But then when she turns around, Jack is there, and they embrace and cry.
It goes on for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Actually, it had a good payoff.
And then he just says, "Please don't leave me." Then they cut to they're at a hospital. Jack is sick, so I'm guessing his other kidney's going away or something. Well, here they said they suspect high blood pressure and a possibility of a stroke.
Typhus.
What's that?
They also it's also like typhus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
Uh,
it's like that's one of those things like you don't hear about that anymore. But it's a terrible disease.
and then Jack starts like deliriously rambling about random things. At some point, he like regains clarity, and um, and he
But he
asks like,
sees his own death coming too.
yeah,
Sadly, it's like that's always sad when because
but
before I die, I want to be like optimistic, like hey, quit crying, everyone. I'm walking out of here, and then just drop over dead 15 minutes later. It's like, well, he was at least he was happy before he died, but not in this case.
Okay, I can't remember the order here. I wrote the dialogue, but I don't really said it. I think she goes, "Want to go back to New York," and he says, "What as?" and then she says, "Comrades," or is that the other way around?
And I think she says it because he's
Okay.
not like really clear because they're giving him like fluids because
Okay.
they've misdiagnosed him as like, no, he will be fine. This is good. It will get better. You know, it's the one kidney. We've got to flush it out, or it's something like that. And it's like, oh, okay.
But it's supposed to be like this kind of like sweet moment where it's like
It's poignant, yeah.
it's like, are we gonna be are we gonna be husband and wife? Where like at this time the husband is like the head of everything. It's like you're the more famous writer. Like, what are we going back? Like, we're going back as comrades. Like, all right, yeah, bringing everything together. Like, we're all equal.
Nope.
Then Louise goes off to get some water. And then she's like, she's getting water, and there's like a she's like frightened by it, like and thankful to a child that like picks up something she dropped. Um, but when she gets back to the room, it's surrounded by people, and she knows Jack is dead.
Yeah.
um, there's also the refrain. There's like this poem about like you can't climb my apple tree, and you can't. It's like it's constant throughout this movie. I don't remember what it's called or who wrote it. But that refrain comes back, and that's the end of the movie. So yeah, sad ending, but a very interesting story. What's that?
I said, no, yeah, it's. I'm trying to look up this song that keeps.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's 1958. That one. That's way before that. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I mean, that didn't resonate with me. It's just that the historical tapestry of this resonated with me.
Yeah.
Because like Jack Reed was one of the few Americans, who lied and who was buried in state in the Soviet Union. Like I think there was only 3, and he was one of them because he was such a good propagandist. And and this is one of those. This is one of those movies. It's like it's kind of weird because you realize it's like 1981, like the start of the Reagan era, and this movie came out. But really, at the end of the day, this movie wasn't. It was more about the relationship between these two people and this huge, like historical backdrop. It's like, yeah, they were communists or something, but they weren't bad people, which was like that was really unusual. Especially because the 1980s was basically what I call like the start of the second Cold War. Really, because that's when Reagan became president, and it was like, oh, it's going to get nuts. Not that anything crazy is going to happen, but we're going to spend a lot of money on stupid weapons. And the Soviet Union is going to cease to exist in 10 years.
Well, also, like, this movie like depicts like the bad parts of communism, so it's not propaganda for communism. It's just like, well, here's what happened, and here's its faults and its positives.
Yeah, that's what I like about it, because
actually, like, Reagan was a fan of this movie, which just kind of seems weird.
Well, yeah, because it shows like the problem, because when we talk about
play in your yard.
What is it like? We got to send V'ger a message from this movie. That part of the movie.
Yeah,
It's real easy to pick out which section you want to do. It's the Maureen Stapleton / Emma Goldman character talking with Jack Reed about like the failings of communism. Like, can we endorse a system that kills 20 million people to achieve its ends? Like, does that really work? I mean, I don't think she says 20 million. I think she says 4 million. But it's like, yeah, this is like, it's a sad movie because like these people are really sincere about a bad system that failed. It's not like they like hated America, because that's the thing about communism. Because again, I've had the rare privilege of living in a place where there's like people who claim to be real communists have talked to me, and I'm always interested in like cultivating friends like that. It's like, oh, tell me your tale. I just want to know, because I don't agree with it obviously, but I want to know what you think. And it's like the sincerity of these people. It's like we really want to make the world good, but yet all the evil that comes out of trying to, overthrow capitalism and replace it with a state system of command economy. And it's like all the failings of communism are we know what they are. If you just study history, you can see it. But it's still like, it's sad because ultimately these people want to do good for everyone. They want to do good for the workers, or what they call the international proletariat and all that. It's sad that it never works. Because there's no like economic horsepower behind the communist system that can sustain all these great things that they want to do, because that's just not how, I mean, we need an economics expert on here to explain to us why it doesn't work, but we can see that it fails because it's failed every time. And that's kind of the sad, that's why if I had to identify myself as pie in the sky, like what do I identify with politically, what would I want to see is like some kind of socialism.
Yeah.
That's as far as I go, because I'm always like a big fan of like the Star Trek future. It's like, yeah, I want that, but I don't know how you attain that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a cool idea. I would love to be the best, like, I don't know, model builder or whatever I am in a Star Trek world. Unfortunately, I'm stuck in this world, but I'm still doing 100% better than any of my ancestors. So it's not too bad a place to be. But yeah, you can always hope for better, but you're not going to achieve it through communism. And that's the sad truth of this movie and a lot, and of these people and of that time. Because they're trying to organize an industrial West. That's the world they live in. That world doesn't exist anymore in the West. The West is not very industrial. That's more like Asia at this point. But even that's fading quick. Pretty soon, the industrial areas are going to be like machine areas. Like they're not even going to be people. So,
that song is "I Don't Want to Play in Your Yard," written in 1894 by Philip Wingate.
Okay, cool. You found it. Yeah, it was a recurring theme throughout the movie. It didn't really bounce off me very hard, so I didn't like revisit it. It's like,
it's constant throughout. That's the song they talk about, where it's like I don't want to play in your yard, like this monotone weird song, and they're like, and the way the people are talking about it is like, man, that was a banger. Like it's like, this song sucks.
I guess. It's like, dude, I grew up in the era of Pink Floyd. You've got to tell me like why this song
this is very simple song that's it's very quaint. It's why it doesn't resonate, because I kind of require a bit more complicated things than that. But
well, that was my earlier joke about like, it's like World War II set to Metallica would be a lot cooler than the actual World War II, because they didn't have that kind of music back then. It was all big band.
It's why Vietnam movies work, because it has the best soundtrack.
Yeah, it's Rolling Stones, like awesome. Creedence Clearwater Revival. Yeah, we're gonna run through the jungle, literally. Satan Cries begins. Like, absolutely, that is the Vietnam War.
I didn't look up any critical enough. I mean, this won an Oscar for direction, I think cinematography, best actress, and I think it was but it was like nominated for everything, but it didn't win. It did not win best picture or
best director and best supporting. I think Maureen Dowd won.
Yeah. And best cinematography.
Yeah. Cinematography. Okay. Cool.
But I did find this quote when I was researching stuff about John Milius for Red Dawn. I did find this quote about this movie from him.
I'm anxious to hear. Yes.
I think of Warren Beatty that he engineered all the respect he was going to get for Reds, and he really didn't get any, did he? It didn't work. He got his Oscars and everything else, but I don't think anybody comes up to him and said they are really moved by Reds. Fame and glory and all those things are quite empty words.
What, John Milius is kind of a shithead? No, that surprises me considering his political backdrop. This movie is kind of like weirdly unspoken of.
Yeah.
Considering like you watch it and it's like, oh, this is cool, but like everyone's seen Gandhi, which is another cool movie of this kind of stripe, but nobody, like I've never talked to anyone who's like,
I have not seen that movie. Although
it's a great movie, watch it.
I've also never seen Lawrence of Arabia either. So
oh well, your life is incomplete. If you don't watch it, because if you don't watch Lawrence of Arabia, you won't die. That was my thing. Like, I never watched The Godfather. Remember that a couple of years ago, and then we watched it, and then I started having health problems. It's like, maybe I shouldn't have watched it. No, I'm kidding. My health problems are from being a big fat ass. That's not has anything to do with watching The Godfather.
So we're sending a probe to space, and the inside the probe contains a supercut of the imperfect movies that is a collection of the Verhoeven Effect. So what scene from this movie are we sending into space, Nate?
Oh, I've already said. I mean, for me, it's the scene between Warren Beatty and Maureen Stapleton about communism. And it's like, how can we endorse a system that kills millions? Like, this has failed. And he's like, what? He's like, oh no. He's like Pikachu, in the memes where he looks like exasperated. It's like, what? That's not true.
Well, my scene I picked was the second scene with Eugene and Louise where they're at his house, and it's actually kind of the same scene about like discussing like, yeah, this is Jack's fantasy. This isn't real, and you're never going to accomplish anything. But we will send your scene to space.
Well, no, I mean, I wrote that down too because it's that was the other scene I included was Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton, where it's like the quote is, "We will be destroyed by our own beliefs," and that's the scene you're talking about, right? Am I getting it right?
Yeah, when Jack's gone to Russia and she goes to his house or his place. Yeah.
No, I have a lot. Yeah, I have a lot of notes on this, but that's from a historical context. Like the scene between him and Maureen Dowd is like perfect. It's like, yeah, that was the problem with the Bolshevik Revolution and everything that came after it was like, yeah, it's just like it's just another system of misery. It just like the Russians always had a in the cynical 70s, they had a thing about like Bolshevism. Communism unites us all in misery. It's like we're equally as screwed under communism. Like no one's ahead of us. It's like only the party apparatchiks, only they have the wine and the limousines. But yeah, everyone else is just as miserable, from a heart surgeon to a factory worker. Like we have the same shortages.
But so, yeah. I do think that like, if somebody's not willing to like read the history on this stuff. It's like, is there a movie about it? This is a good movie about it.
Yeah. This is a great movie of dialogue. I mean, this is one of those movies where I said earlier, it's like, it's not conventionally entertaining.
Yeah.
It's a great movie about dialogue and cinematography. You can learn a lot about what a cool movie should look like just from, how it looks, and this, and the dialogue in it is like, yeah, this is how you write a screenplay. But it is not like an action movie. It is not a good historical drama. I mean, it is because it talks about an obscure point in history that a lot of people don't know about, especially in America, because communism is just, universally seen as like, oh, it's like Satan and everything all rolled up into one. It's like, no, it was a lot of sincere people who were, genuinely misguided by evil people that, it led to a cataclysm of failure and human suffering unparalleled by almost any other thing in history that has happened. But
it's also just an unconventional love story that stuff all happens in the background of.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's what's cool about this movie is the the love story. What you say, like the chemistry between the actors that like doesn't make any sense but seems to work. You know it when you see it. So yeah, I'd have to say this is like a great movie. If you've got 3.5 hours to kill,
Well,
watch
see,
it.
like that's the thing. Like when we're watching these movies, like sometimes you gotta like stop and like go look up like stuff like, oh, what's going on around this time. So what like was a boring watch for me is because I'm stopping every 15 minutes to look
Oh,
up a Wikipedia article, and then like so my 3 hours and 15-minute viewing is actually more like 6 hours. So
oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, for me, it's like kind of it's like a historical narrative, writ large, because I'm familiar with a lot of these characters and what they actually did and what they believed, and it's like the Soviet Union is not some alien structure to me. It's like, oh, I understand. I've read a lot about it. It's the most fascinating empire that's ever existed.
well, if you like what you heard, and how can it, you can find us at verhoeveneffect.com, and you can rate us, our podcast, on whatever platform of your choice. You can rate us whatever you want, but remember, the highest rating is the only thing the algorithm listens to. Remember, you control the algorithm doesn't control you. We have listener support at verhoeveneffect.com, where you can support us at a monthly stipend of either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. We're at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, Facebook, Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory and watch both this and that show live and unedited. And we also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/greed factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.